Hello everyone, and welcome back to Shadow Man Stories. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the stories. My name is Jackson Whitmore, but everyone calls me Jack. I've been a park ranger here in the Tongass National Forest for almost 5 years now. Before that, I was a bomber pilot in the war. Not that I like to talk about those days much. Some memories are better left buried. This morning started like many others, cold and quiet. The sun was just coming up over the trees, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. But something felt different. The air seemed heavier somehow. I stood at the edge of the lake, watching the light dance across the water. For a moment, I saw something else reflected there, burning buildings, screaming people running through streets. I blinked, and it was gone. Just another trick my mind plays these days. "You're losing it, Jack," I muttered to myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. 3 ravens flew overhead, forming a perfect triangle. It reminded me of our bomber formations during the war. My grandmother, half telling it herself, would have called it a sign, a bad one. The temperature suddenly dropped, and I pulled my jacket tighter. A strange mist rolled in, bringing with it a smell that took me right back to 1945, aviation fuel, and something worse, something burning that shouldn't be burning. I switched on my radio, hoping for some weather updates, but all I got was static. And beneath the static, I could have sworn I heard air raid sirens wailing. Just static, I told myself, switching it off quickly. That's when I noticed the river otter watching me from the bank. Nothing unusual about otters around here except this one's eyes. They seemed knowing, like it recognized me from somewhere. I turned away, following the path through the ancient Sitka spruces. Many of these trees carried strange scorch marks. The official story says they're from controlled burns 15 years ago. I know better. I was there when the military conducted their exercises. The path seemed different today. No matter which fork I took, I felt like I was being guided somewhere. Specific, like the forest itself was herding me. I stopped at a small, sandy beach where the river widened. Something metallic caught my eye, half buried in the sand. I dug it out and felt my blood run cold. Dog tags, military issue. I recognized the names immediately, Johnson and Peters. They were in my squadron. The official record says they died in a training accident. But what were their tags doing here, thousands of miles from where they supposedly crashed? I pocketed the tags, my hand shaking. The forest had suddenly gone completely silent. No birds, no insects, nothing but the sound of my own breathing and the pounding of my heart. That's when I knew for certain. Something was very wrong in these woods today. And whatever it was, it had been waiting for me for a very long time. I tucked the dog tags into my pocket and kept walking. The weight of them felt heavy against my leg, like they were pulling me down, just like my memories. People think I have regular nightmares from the war. PTSD, the doctors call it, but it's not that simple. There are things I did in the war that no one knows about. Secret missions. We bombed places we weren't supposed to bomb. Sacred places. Tlingit burial grounds. They told us it was for testing. New weapons, but I've never been able to shake the feeling that there was more to it. My ex-wife, Sarah, left 3 years ago. She couldn't handle the nightmares anymore. Not just the screaming, but the talking. "You speak in your sleep," she told me once. Words I don't understand. Tlingit words. Words I've never learned but somehow know. I looked down at my hands, weathered from years in the forest. Strong hands that once dropped bombs on villages. Now they were shaking as I dipped them in a stream to splash water on my face. I've always had this strange fear of water since coming to Alaska. The locals have stories about creatures called kushtaka that live in the water. Otter men who steal souls. Old stories, nothing more. At least that's what I tell myself. I touched the rifle slung over my shoulder. It was my father's. The bullets, though, those were special. made from melted down Tlingit ceremonial silver. A local silversmith made them for me when I first started having the dreams. He didn't ask questions, just took my money and gave me a strange look. These days, I work alone. It's better that way. The last 3 rangers assigned to work with me all had accidents. Bad. Uns, all near the old burial grounds. The locals started talking. The park service stopped assigning partners. At night, sometimes I look through my old war photos. There's something strange in some of them. Shadows that look like people, or animals standing like people, in the smoke after bombings. Otter-shaped shadows, the Tlingit elders in the nearest village won't speak to me, won't even say my name. I heard one call me soul debt carrier when I walked by. I pretended not to hear. Maybe that's why I work so hard to save hikers who get lost. Why I volunteer for the most dangerous rescue missions. Like I'm trying to balance some cosmic scale, save enough lives to make up for the ones I took. Lately the visions have been getting worse. Not just in dreams now. Sometimes in broad daylight I see them, otter men watching me from the trees, from the water. My doctor gave me pills, said it's stress and guilt playing tricks on my mind. But what if it's not? I sat down on a fallen log and put my head in my hands. Maybe I was finally having the breakdown the VA doctors had been warning me about for years. Maybe the forest and the isolation were finally getting to me. Or maybe something was actually out there, watching and waiting. Something that knew what I'd done. Something that had been patient for 15 long years. I took a deep breath and stood up. Crazy or not, I had a job to do. Miles of forest to patrol before nightfall. That's when I saw it. The first real sign that I wasn't just losing my mind. There, by the edge of the small inlet, was a fishing net. Not unusual to find. Fishing gear in these parts, but this was different. The net wasn't just abandoned. It was arranged in a pattern. A very specific pattern that made my blood run cold. It matched the bombing grid we used for our missions over Dresden. Exactly, down to the inch. This isn't possible, I whispered. The forest had gone completely quiet. No birds singing, no insects buzzing, just silence. The same terrible silence that follows after bombs fall and everything that could scream has been silenced. I turned away from the net, my heart pounding. That's when I spotted it, about 50 yards down the shore. An overturned canoe. Again, not unusual on its own, but the way it was positioned, the angle of it, the broken part of the hull, it was identical to Peterson's crashed B-17 after we took fire over Germany. I felt dizzy. My hands were shaking so badly I had to put them in my pockets to steady them. That's when I smelled it again, burning fuel mixed with the salt smell of kelp. It hit me like a physical blow, sending me back to 1945, to flames and screams, and the terrible knowledge that some of those screams were coming from women and children. I blinked hard, trying to stay in the present. Focus, Jack, I told myself. You're a ranger. You have a job to do. I shrugged off my backpack to get my water bottle. As I unzipped it, I froze. There, on top of my usual gear, was a set of bombing navigation charts, the exact ones we'd used for our classified missions. I hadn't seen these in 15 years. I certainly hadn't packed them. With shaking hands, I pulled out my radio. I needed to call this in, to talk to another human being, to hear a voice that wasn't from my memories. The radio crackled to life, but instead of the usual park service channel, I heard my own voice, younger, sharper, calling out bombing coordinates, but not in English, in Tlingit, a language I'd never learned but somehow understood in that moment. I dropped the radio like it had burned me. From somewhere in the forest came a sound, a soft, haunting melody, a lullaby. I recognized it, though I'd only heard it once before. A Tlingit mother had been singing it to her child just before our planes appeared overhead. Before we destroyed her village in what the mission reports later called a training exercise. I started walking faster, trying to reach the main trail, trying to get back to my truck. Something moved in the water to my left. I glanced over and stopped dead. Salmon, dozens of them, dead and arranged in a pattern on the shore. The pattern matched the layout of civilian casualties from the bombing raid on the coastal village. In 44, each fish positioned exactly where a body had fallen. Fog began rolling in off the water, thick, unnatural fog. As it swirled around me, I could see shapes in it, buildings burning, people running, screaming faces. My mind was playing tricks on me. Had to be. I pulled out my compass, hoping to find my way back to the main trail. The needle spun wildly before stopping, pointing not north, but toward the location of the Tlingit burial ground we had bombed. I shook the compass, tapped it, but the needle wouldn't budge. "This isn't real," I said out loud, my voice sounding thin and frightened in the unnatural silence. This can't be real. But deep down, I knew better. The forest was speaking to me. The past was reaching out with cold, dead hands, and something was coming for me, something that had been waiting a very long time. I heard a splash in the water behind me. Something was emerging from the lake. Something that wasn't human. I turned slowly, my father's rifle heavy in my hands. What I saw made me forget how to breathe. It rose from the water slowly. At first it looked like an otter, sleek and dark, but as it continued to emerge, I saw it wasn't an animal at all. It stood upright like a man, but its skin glistened with lake water and dark fur. Its face kept changing. One moment it looked almost human, the next like an otter. And then I staggered back as I recognized the faces appearing on its shifting features. Children, Tlingit children. Their faces were exactly as I remembered them from the village before the bombs fell. Faces I'd seen through binoculars during our reconnaissance flights. Faces I'd tried to forget for 15 years. A wave of guilt hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. It was like having a mountain dropped on my chest. Every death, every scream, every life cut short. I felt them all at once. Not just remembered. Them. Actually felt them. What are you?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. The creature didn't speak, not with words. Instead, images poured into my mind. I saw myself through other eyes, through the eyes of those watching from the ground as our planes approached. I felt their terror, their confusion, their pain. Parts of the creature's body were burned, showing charred flesh and blisters like those caused by aviation fuel, just like the victims of our bombings. From the forest behind me I heard voices, so many voices, all calling my name. Not in anger exactly, but in accusation, in demand for something I'd owed them for a very long time. "Jackson Whitmore," they called, "soul debt carrier, face your reckoning." The creature, the Kushtaka, moved closer. In my mind, I saw other men like me, soldiers, officers, men who had given orders or followed them, men who had blood on their hands. The Kushtaka had found them all, across decades, across continents, a supernatural hunter of those who had committed atrocities. My hands shook as I raised my father's rifle. I fired once, twice, 3 times. The silver bullets passed, right through the creature as if it were made of mist. It didn't even flinch. The silver isn't pure enough, I realized aloud. Not pure enough for spiritual justice. The creature nodded, as if I'd finally understood something important. In my mind, I saw images of this being, this spirit, protecting the sacred sites for centuries, long before white men came, long before I was born. I saw how it had guarded burial grounds and holy places, keeping them safe, until we came with our bombs and our exercises. The sound of bomber engines filled the air, a sound that couldn't possibly be real in 1959 Alaska. But it grew louder, surrounding us. The forest around me seemed to transform. Trees became the burned-out shells of buildings. The lake became a crater left by bombs. And all around us were the spirits of the dead, watching, waiting. The Kushtaka stood before me, fully formed now, half man, half otter, but somehow more terrifying than any monster from a nightmare. because I knew it was real. It was justice incarnate. It extended a hand, a paw, toward me. In that gesture was a choice. Face justice willingly, the voices whispered in my mind, or be hunted for eternity. I knew what it meant. All these years of nightmares, of guilt, of trying to outrun my past. They were over. One way or another, today was the day of reckoning, the day when all accounts would be settled. I looked into the creature's eyes, eyes that held the pain of hundreds of innocent people, and made my decision. I lowered the rifle. It wouldn't. Help me now, no weapon would. This wasn't about fighting. It was about facing what I'd done. I understand now, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. This isn't about running or hiding anymore. It's about paying what I owe. The Kushtaka's eyes seemed to soften slightly, though its form remained terrifying. It gestured toward the lake, which had become still as glass. I knew what it wanted. I walked to the edge of the water. The lake now looked like a mirror, but instead of reflecting the sky, it showed scenes from the war, my war, the bombings, the villages, the people. This was my trial, my judgment. I stepped into the water. It was cold, colder than any water should be, even in Alaska, but I kept going until I was knee-deep. The Kushtaka followed, moving through the water without making a ripple. "Show me," I said. "Show me everything I did. I need to see it all." The creature touched my forehead with one clawed hand. Suddenly I wasn't myself anymore. I was a young Tlingit girl, looking up at the sky as strange planes approached. I felt her confusion, then her terror. I felt the heat of the explosion, the pain, as shrapnel tore through her small body. Then I was someone else, an old man praying at an ancient burial site when the world erupted in fire around him. Then a mother trying desperately to shield her baby from falling debris. One by one, I experienced every death I had caused. Not as the pilot safely thousands of feet above, but as the people on the ground. Every moment of fear, every second of pain, every life cut short. I fell to my knees in the water, tears streaming down my face. Part of me wanted to fight back, to justify what I'd done. I was following orders, I wanted to scream. It was war. I didn't know they were sacred sites. But those excuses died before they reached my lips. The truth was simpler and harder. I had dropped those bombs. I had taken those lives. And no order, no war, no ignorance could erase that debt. The battle wasn't with the Kushtaka. It was with myself. "I accept full responsibility," I said through my tears, "for every life, for every death. I offer my soul as payment for what I've done." I closed my eyes, expecting to feel claws tear into me, to feel my life end there in that cold lake. Instead, I felt something like a hand on my shoulder. I opened my eyes to see the Kushtaka looking at me with an expression that wasn't hate or anger, but something like respect, understanding. "You are spared," the voices whispered in my mind, "but marked." A burning sensation spread across my chest. Looking down, I saw strange symbols appearing on my skin, glowing blue-green, like phosphorescence in the water. Tlingit symbols. They burned for a moment, then faded, leaving marks like old scars. The Kushtaka spoke directly to my mind. "You will live, Jackson Whitmore. Live with the complete knowledge of every life you destroyed. Live as a guardian to warn others who would desecrate what is sacred. Your debt is not paid, but you may work to balance it in the years you have left." The pain faded, but the memories remained. I could still feel each death, each life. I knew I always would. This was my burden now, my purpose. The forest slowly returned to normal around me. The bomber sounds faded. The Kushtaka backed away, its form becoming more otter-like again. "I'll protect these lands," I promised, "for as long as I live." The creature slipped beneath the water without a sound, leaving only ripples behind. I spent the next 15, years doing exactly what I promised. I became the fiercest protector of Tlingit sacred sites in the Forest Service. I learned their language properly. I worked with the elders who had once refused to speak my name. I stopped military exercises near burial grounds. I testified before Congress about the bombings, though they buried my testimony as classified. When I felt my time growing short at the age of 57, I asked the Tlingit elders to teach me their purification ritual. They were hesitant, but finally agreed. I performed it at the site of the worst bombing, the one that still haunted me most. As the ritual ended, I felt a presence in the water nearby. The Kushtaka had returned. But this time I wasn't afraid. "I'm ready," I told it. It nodded, extending its hand once more. This time I took it without hesitation. They found my body the next day, peaceful, by the lake shore. The official cause of death was heart failure. But the Tlingit elders knew better. They said my spirit had finally joined those I had wronged, not in punishment but in healing, in balance. Sometimes rangers in the Tongass National Forest still report seeing a strange figure, half man, half otter, watching over certain sacred sites. And with it, they say, is the spirit of an old park ranger, helping to keep the balance between worlds. They say if you listen closely on quiet mornings, you can hear him whisper a warning to those who would harm sacred land. Some debts can never be outrun. Some scales must always be balanced. My name is Isabella Mendoza, but everyone calls me Izzy. The scorching sun beats down on my patrol truck as I drive along the dusty roads of Big Bend National Park. It's my 3rd year as a park ranger here, and I still haven't gotten used to the way the heat makes the horizon dance like a living thing. I check my water supply out of habit. In the Chihuahuan Desert, water isn't just a necessity, it's life itself. The same water that migrants desperately seek when they cross these lands, often with tragic endings. This morning started like any other until I spotted something unusual, a roadrunner standing perfectly still in the middle of the road. When I slowed down, it darted ahead, stopped, and looked back at me, almost like it wanted me to follow. I've worked in these parts long enough to know when something feels off. I followed the bird for nearly a mile before it disappeared behind a cluster of rocks. That's when I smelled it, that strange copper scent that doesn't belong in the desert. I grabbed my gear and stepped out of the truck. The wind picked up, carrying whispers that seemed to float between Spanish and languages much older. Working Border Patrol taught me enough Spanish to recognize pleas for help, for water, for mercy. But these whispers felt different, like echoes of something that happened long ago and just yesterday at the same time. I've seen things in this desert that I couldn't report, not while I was with Border Patrol, things that made me quit and become a park ranger instead. But the memories follow me like shadows, especially in places like this where the earth seems to hold secrets. My radio crackled with static. I recognized the frequency, one used by those vigilante groups who think they're above the law. They hunt people like animals out here. I turned it down but kept it on. Sometimes knowing their movements is the only way to stay one step ahead. As I moved deeper into the canyon, I spotted a family of javelinas feeding near disturbed earth. They scattered when they saw me, but something about the way they moved felt wrong. Animals know things we don't. They sense when death has visited a place. The temperature seemed to rise 10 degrees in just a few steps. August in the desert is always brutal, but this felt personal, like the land itself was angry. The heat pressed down like a physical weight, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. Above me, buzzards circled in lazy patterns, but they never landed. In my experience, that's strange behavior for scavengers. They circle when they sense death, but they don't find what they're looking for when humans have been careful to hide their crimes. I pulled out my binoculars and scanned the horizon. The maze of canyons stretched before me, hiding God knows what in their shadows. I've learned that the most dangerous predators in this desert walk on two legs, and some of them wear the same uniform I once did. What I was about to discover would change everything I thought I knew about justice, about good and evil, and about the desert itself. Because some things refuse to stay buried no matter how deep you dig the grave. I never thought I'd end up as a park ranger, but after what I saw in the Border Patrol, I couldn't stay. 3 years ago, I watched some of my fellow agents join a group of vigilantes. They caught a family crossing the border at night. What happened next still wakes me up screaming sometimes. I reported it to my supervisor, but the paperwork disappeared. That's when I knew I had to leave. The system I thought would protect people was broken, and I couldn't be part of it anymore. My fiancé, Marco, understands better than most. He's a vet who treats animals hurt by the walls, fences, and traps set up along the border. Last week, he spent 6 hours removing barbed wire from a young deer's leg. Animals don't know about borders, he always says. They just know home. Sometimes I look at my Border Patrol training manual and feel sick. All those techniques we learned, tracking, hunting, capturing, it was like we were being taught to hunt humans, not help them. Now, I use those same skills to find people before they die of thirst or heat. In my truck, I keep extra water. First, aid supplies and thermal blankets. I tell my boss they're for lost hikers, which is true. I just don't specify which kind of hikers I'm looking for. Dr. James Hartley from the university visits the park often. He studies stories about monsters and how they connect to real-life violence. Folklore doesn't appear from nowhere, he told me once. People create monsters to explain the monstrous things they see. We've become friends, sharing coffee while he talks about ancient beliefs, and I pretend I don't believe in any of it. Around my neck hangs the cross my abuela gave me when I joined Border Patrol. For protection, she said, from both the devils you can see and the ones you can't. I'm not very religious, but I've never taken it off. Something tells me I need all the protection I can get. Growing up near the border taught me where to find water in the desert. My father showed me hidden springs and shady spots where you could survive the heat. Now I mark these places on maps I accidentally leave where people might find them. It's not much, but it might save a life. Marco says I care too much. Maybe he's right. But ever since I was a kid, I've felt this need to look out for people who can't protect themselves. My mom called it being stubborn. My dad called it being brave. I just call it doing what's right. Lately, there have been stories about animals killed in strange ways, drained of blood with weird marks on their bodies. Some locals call it El Vampiro, a vampire animal. But Dr. Hartley has a theory that these attacks happen in the same places. Where vigilante groups are active, it's like something is punishing them. When I first heard about these attacks, I thought we had some exotic predator in the park. Maybe a big cat that wandered up from Mexico. I started tracking it, trying to find patterns, but what I found made less and less sense. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just an animal. I didn't know it then, but I was being watched too, by something older than the border, older than the country itself. Something that had been waiting for someone like me. The first dead cow I found was just plain wrong. Its body looked shriveled, like something had sucked all the fluids out. 2 small holes punctured its neck. I'd seen plenty of animal attacks before, but nothing like this. What bothered me most wasn't the wounds. It was how similar they looked to what I once saw happen to a young man caught by vigilantes. They had used cattle prods, leaving the same kind of marks. I tried to shake the thought away, but it stuck with me. I noticed something else strange too. The usual desert animals, coyotes, javelinas, even insects, were gone from the area. It was like they knew to stay away. In all my years working these lands, I'd never seen wildlife avoid a spot like this unless something was very wrong. When I checked my equipment the next morning, I found it covered in a dark, sticky substance. I took a sample back to the ranger station and ran a basic test. The results made my hands shake. human blood. But there had been no reports of injured hikers or missing persons. The smell came next, that copper scent that doesn't belong in the desert. It followed me as I patrolled, sometimes stronger, sometimes fainter, but always there, like the desert was bleeding. A week later, Dr. Hartley called me excited about some cave paintings he'd found. "They're recent, Izzy," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "mixed in with ones that are centuries old. They show men with guns, hunting people, and something hunting the hunters. I went to see for myself. The new paintings used the same natural pigments as the ancient ones, but the images were clearly modern. Border patrol vehicles, guns, and a dark shape with glowing eyes watching it all." That night, my radio picked up chatter from one of the vigilante groups. They were planning to intercept a family crossing near Smuggler's Canyon. I heard them laughing about what they would do when they found them. I grabbed my gear and headed out, hoping I could get there first. As I drove, a strange humming filled my truck. It wasn't the engine or the radio. It sounded like voices singing together, but not in any language I knew. The sound made my skin prickle and my heart race. I rolled down the window, but the humming only got louder. Dr. Hartley texted me his latest research findings. Every creature sighting corresponds with vigilante activity. It's like something is watching them, Izzy. Something is keeping score. Near the canyon entrance, I spotted unusual patterns in the dust. At first, I thought they were just animal tracks or wind patterns. But when I took a photo and looked at it later, they formed clear symbols, the same ones from the cave paintings, marking what looked like graves. When I tried to start my truck again, nothing happened. Someone had cut the fuel line. I was stuck, miles from the ranger station, with night falling and those vigilantes somewhere nearby. And something else, something I couldn't explain, watching from the shadows. I grabbed my emergency pack and started walking. The desert at night is a different world. Sounds travel differently, shadows move in ways they shouldn't. Every rustle made me jump, but I kept going, following the coordinates I'd heard on the radio. The humming grew louder with each step, and with it came a feeling I couldn't shake, that whatever I was tracking wasn't just some exotic animal. It was something that had been in this desert long before any border existed, something that was now hunting the hunters. I found the vigilante truck first, empty, doors open, rifles left behind. Something had scared them, badly enough to make them run without their precious guns. The tracks led toward a narrow canyon where the moonlight couldn't reach. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a shadow moving between the rocks. Then it stepped into a patch of moonlight, and my breath caught in my throat. It looked like a coyote, but wrong. Too big, standing almost to my waist. Its skin was hairless, wrinkled like old leather. But what made my legs go weak were its eyes. Human eyes, filled with a sadness so deep it hurt to look at them. As I watched, frozen in place, the creature changed. Its body shifted and flowed like water, becoming taller, more human-shaped. I recognized the face it wore now. A young man I'd seen die 2 years ago, left in the desert by smugglers when he couldn't keep up. I'd found his body too late. "You remember me," it said, but the voice wasn't coming from its mouth. The voice seemed to come from the air around us, from the ground beneath my feet, from inside my own head. I couldn't move. My body wouldn't listen to me. It was like all my strength had been drained away, leaving me helpless, just like those people I'd failed to save. The creature's face shifted again, showing me person after person, faces I knew from my border patrol days. People who had died trying to cross, people whose cases were never investigated, people whose bodies were never found. When it spoke again, I heard two voices layered together. Dr. Hartley's academic tone discussing the folklore of justice spirits, and beneath it, the whispered prayers of dying migrants, begging for water, for help, for their families to be told what happened to them. You know all of them, the creature said. All of them. I tried to help, I whispered, finding my voice at last. Not enough, it answered. Never enough. I pulled my gun, standard procedure when facing a dangerous animal. I fired once, twice. The bullets passed through the creature like it was made of mist. It didn't even flinch. Then it showed me something that made me drop my gun in shock. The desert around us rippled and changed, showing me what this land looked like before. Before the fences, before the patrols, before the borders. People moved freely across the land, following ancient paths, trading, visiting family. The vision was so real, I could feel the difference in the air. Cleaner, freer. This is what was, the creature said. This is what should be. The sound that filled the air then was like nothing I'd ever heard. The desert wind mixed with the sound of flowing blood and whispered names. It grew louder until I had to cover my ears, but still it pounded in my head. The landscape kept shifting around me, flashing between what it is now, a militarized zone with cameras and sensors and walls, and what it had been for thousands of years before us. Then I realized the creature wasn't alone. Other shapes moved, in the darkness, different forms, different faces, but all with the same eyes, all watching me, all judging me. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Justice," they said together, the word echoing off the canyon walls. Justice. I understood then. These weren't just random attacks. This wasn't some monster from folklore coming to life. This was the desert itself, responding to the violence that had soaked into its soil year after year. These spirits were seeking balance for all the injustice they had witnessed, and they had chosen me to help them. The heat came suddenly, like opening an oven door. I could barely breathe as the temperature soared around me. The creature, the chupacabra, as Dr. Hartley would call it, watched me with those human eyes that seemed to hold centuries of pain. "The desert burns away what doesn't belong," it said, and I understood. This heat wasn't natural. It was the land trying to cleanse itself of the evil that had been done here. The canyon walls seemed to close in around me, like I was standing in the courtroom. The spirits circled, waiting for my answer, waiting for me to choose. My Border Patrol badge was still in my pocket. I kept it as a reminder. It felt heavy now, burning against my leg. "You were part of this," the creature said, its form shifting between human and animal. "You watched, you knew." "I left when I saw what was happening," I argued, but my voice sounded weak even to me. "Not enough," the spirits whispered together. "Show us justice." Images flashed through my mind. The vigilante group I'd been tracking, their connections to certain Border Patrol agents, the evidence I'd collected but never shared because I was afraid no one would believe me. The creature knew everything, saw everything. I heard engines in the distance. The vigilantes were coming back, probably with reinforcements. I had to make a choice. I ran toward an old mine shaft nearby, the creature following like a shadow. Inside, the air was cooler, but the feeling of judgment remained. This was my shelter, but also my moment of decision: stay safe and silent or risk everything for justice. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Hartley. "Found proof. Border Patrol. Captain Davis is leading the vigilantes. Have video. Meeting you at Ranger Station at dawn." My hands shook. Captain Davis had been my supervisor, the one who made my reports disappear, the one who always knew where migrants would cross, almost like he had inside information. The creature watched me read the message, its eyes knowing. "Your friend seeks justice too," it said. I tried calling Hartley back, but there was no signal in the mine. Something told me he was in danger, that Davis wouldn't let that evidence see daylight. The creature's form shifted again, becoming something older, more primal. It spoke in a language I didn't know but somehow understood. It talked about justice that was older than courts and laws, about balance that must be maintained, about the land remembering what people try to forget. I realized then what I had to do. The system I believed in wasn't working. The laws I had sworn to uphold were being used to commit crimes. Maybe it was time for a different kind of justice, the kind that doesn't come from law books but from something deeper. "I'll help you," I said to the creature, "but no more killing. There has to be another way." Its eyes seemed to soften just slightly. "Show us." I pulled out my phone and opened my secret files. Photos, recordings, locations of unmarked graves. Evidence I'd been gathering since I left Border Patrol. "This is how humans find justice now," I explained, "with proof, with truth." The creature touched the phone with what might have been a hand or a paw, and the screen lit up, even though there was no signal. "Truth," it repeated like it was testing the word. Dawn was breaking when I emerged from the mine. The vigilantes were gone, but my truck was working again, the fuel line mysteriously repaired. I drove straight to the ranger station, praying I wasn't too late to help Hartley, but I was. They found his body near his research site. Official report said it was an animal attack. I knew better. The vigilantes had silenced him. That night, I sent all our evidence to every news outlet, every human rights organization, and every law enforcement agency that wasn't connected to Captain Davis. I included Hartley's final message, naming Davis as the vigilante leader. Within a week, the FBI was investigating. Border Patrol agents were arrested. Mass graves were found exactly where the dust patterns had appeared. Captain Davis disappeared into the desert trying to escape. They never found his body. I quit. The Park Service after that. Went to law school, became an immigration lawyer. Now I use what I learned from both sides of the system to help people find real justice. The attacks stopped after the arrests. The strange cattle deaths ended. The spirits found their justice, at least for now. Sometimes when I'm driving back from the border after helping a family apply for asylum, I see a coyote watching me from the rocks. Its eyes look almost human, and when it howls, it sounds almost like "thank you." I still wear my grandmother's cross. I still carry extra water in my car, and I still listen when the desert whispers. Because justice has many forms, and some of them have teeth. Dr. Hartley's research was published posthumously. Most people think it's just folklore, stories to explain the unexplainable, but I know better. I've seen what lives in the desert, what watches and waits and remembers. Last month, I got a call about another vigilante group forming near El Paso. I took the case immediately. That night, I drove out to the desert and stood under the stars. "We're not finished," I said to the darkness. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of copper and ancient dust, and I knew the desert was listening. "My name is Delilah Mackenzie, but everyone calls me Del." The cold bit at my face as I trudged through the snow in Superior National Forest. January in Minnesota is no joke, especially not in 1971, when the temperature dropped so low my eyelashes froze together. I've been a park ranger here for 8 months now, trying to piece my life back together after what I saw in Vietnam. As a war correspondent, I thought I'd seen the worst humanity had to offer. Turns out, I was wrong. The forest looked perfect today. Pristine white snow covering the pines, sunlight sparkling off ice crystals, but something felt wrong. I can't explain it, but the air tasted different. The scientists say these waters are clean, but I've seen enough industrial waste to recognize the signs. Something's happening to this place that no one's talking about. The wind picked up, carrying strange sounds I couldn't place. It was like hearing chainsaws and heavy machinery, but when I turned to look, there was nothing there. Just trees and snow. The sounds faded in and out, like a radio station you can't quite tune in. I was supposed to be looking for a missing hiker, the third one this month, but my old reporter instincts were screaming that there was a bigger story here. Something beyond a few careless tourists wandering off trail. As I rounded the bend, near Wolf Lake, a howl echoed through the trees. It wasn't like the wolf calls I'd heard before. This one seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It carried a sadness I can't describe, like the last cry of something dying. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw the date 2024 written in the snow, but when I blinked it was gone. That night, the northern lights appeared. The locals said it was unusual for this time of year. I stood watching as the green and purple waves danced across the sky, but instead of random patterns, I could see images: melting ice, rising waters, cities drowning. I shook my head, blaming exhaustion, but the visions remained until the lights faded. The next morning, I took the snowmobile out to check the eastern trails. The machine coughed and sputtered more than usual. I patted its side, wondering how many years these gas guzzlers had left. Resources weren't endless, though people acted like they were. A pine marten crossed my path, its dark eyes meeting mine before it darted into the trees. Something made me follow it. The little creature led me deeper into the forest, stopping occasionally to make sure I was still behind it. Finally, it disappeared into a small clearing. When I reached the spot, the marten was gone, but carved into a tree was a crude X with what looked like a date, 2089, last seen. The temperature had been weird all week. One day freezing, the next almost warm enough to melt the snow, then plunging back to below zero. The old-timers at the ranger station said they'd never seen weather this unpredictable. I couldn't shake the feeling that these weren't just random fluctuations. Walking back toward the station, I noticed something odd about the forest paths. They seemed to shimmer sometimes, revealing other versions of themselves, wider, muddier, with stumps instead of trees. When I tried to look directly at these phantom trails, they vanished. Before heading inside, I checked my compass. The needle spun wildly, pointing north, then south, then spinning in complete circles. I tapped the glass, but it continued its frantic dance. Just like everything else in this forest lately, it seemed to be pointing towards something I couldn't yet see. I wasn't always a park ranger. 3 years ago, I was in Vietnam with a camera and a notepad, dodging bullets to get the truth. I saw things there that haunt me still, especially what those chemicals did to the forests. Agent Orange, they called it. I watched jungles die in days, leaves curling and falling like it was fast-forward autumn. The military said it was safe. I knew better. My husband Tom worked for the company that made those chemicals. When I wrote articles exposing what I'd seen, he called me a traitor. Our marriage didn't survive my conscience. The divorce papers came 2 months after my biggest story broke. I touched the camera hanging around my neck, my constant companion. It was loaded with a special film my photographer friend in Chicago had developed. It captures things the eye misses, he told me. I'd been using it to document the strange happenings in the forest, though I hadn't developed any of the roles yet. My other constant companion rode in the holster on my hip, a .357 Magnum. Park rangers didn't usually carry such heavy firepower, but after Vietnam, I couldn't feel safe with anything less. The bullets felt cold when I loaded them, colder than they should be, like they'd been stored in a freezer. "Mackenzie, radio for you," Sam called from the station door. I trudged through the snow, wondering who'd be calling me. The voice on the other end introduced himself as Jake Thompson. "I'm an environmental scientist," he said. "I've been studying climate projections for this region. I'd like to meet." Something in his voice caught my attention, an urgency that seemed out of place. We arranged to meet the next day at the old fire lookout. After hanging up, I noticed Sam staring at me. "What?" I asked. "You're the spitting image of her, you know," he said, pointing to an old photograph on the wall. It showed a woman in 1890s dress, holding a notebook. Eliza Mackenzie wrote for the local paper. They say she went mad talking about forest spirits and future disasters. I'd never heard of her before. "Any relation?" Sam shrugged. "Could be. She disappeared after writing stories no one would publish. Too crazy, they said." That night I couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside my cabin, carrying whispers I couldn't quite make out. I'd always needed to know the truth, to document it no matter the cost. It had cost me my marriage, my peace in Vietnam. What would it cost me here? The next morning, I hiked to the lookout tower to meet Jake. He was already there, surrounded by strange equipment I didn't recognize. "Thanks for coming," he said, not looking up from a device with blinking lights. "These readings confirm what I feared." Jake was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with a beard and worried eyes. His clothes seemed oddly cut, the fabric unlike anything I'd seen before. "What exactly are you studying?" I asked. "Climate projections," he said quickly. "Future patterns based on current data." But something in the way he said future made my skin prickle. His equipment didn't look like any environmental tools I'd ever seen. Some pieces seemed to shimmer like the forest paths, existing and not existing at the same time. "I think we're investigating the same thing," I told him, pulling out my press credentials. They were expired, but still opened doors. "People aren't just getting lost in these woods. Something's happening here." Jake finally looked directly at me. "You can see it, can't you? The changes, the glimpses." I nodded slowly. "Your ancestor could see them too," he said quietly. "How do you know about her?" He didn't answer, just turned back to his equipment. "I need your help, Delilah. What we're dealing with isn't just about missing hikers. It's about missing time." I should have thought he was crazy. But after what I'd been seeing, his words made a terrible kind of sense. I didn't understand yet that I wasn't investigating disappearances at all. I was witnessing the convergence of what is, what was, and what might be. And something in these woods was trying to show me a truth more frightening than anything I'd seen in war. The next day, Jake and I went deeper into the forest. We were checking out an old hunting cabin where one of the missing hikers was last seen. The door hung open, swinging in the wind. "Hello?" I called, hand resting on my gun. No answer. Inside, the cabin was a mess. Furniture overturned, supplies scattered. But it was the wall that made my stomach turn. Someone had scratched tally marks everywhere, hundreds of them, and written, "Not enough food," in big, desperate letters. "This doesn't make sense," I said, looking through the supplies. "There's plenty of canned food here. Why would anyone be starving?" Jake picked up a can, studying it like it was a strange artifact. "They weren't hungry now," he said quietly. "They were hungry later." Before I could ask what he meant, a crash outside sent us both running. A herd of deer was charging through the clearing, eyes wild with fear. They ran like something was chasing them, but there was nothing there. Nothing I could see anyway. "They're running from something that isn't here yet," Jake murmured. We followed their tracks and came to a small valley I'd never seen before. It was filled with strange equipment, metal boxes with blinking lights, towers with spinning dishes, things that looked like no machines I'd ever seen. "What is all this?" I asked, touching one of the metal boxes. It felt warm despite the freezing air. Jake pulled my hand away quickly. "Don't touch anything. This shouldn't be here. Government equipment." "Something like that," he said, "but not from any government program you know." I tasted metal in the air, like standing too close to power lines. It made my fillings ache. "What's that taste?" "Air contamination," Jake said, checking a device on his wrist. "We should leave." Back at my cabin that night, I developed some of my film. What I saw made no sense. There were people in my photos who hadn't been there when I took the pictures. A woman in strange clothes, children playing where there had been only trees, a city skyline rising behind the forest where there was nothing but wilderness for 100 miles. The radio on my desk suddenly crackled to life, though I hadn't turned it on. A voice spoke through waves of static. "Emergency measures as the third consecutive summer of temperatures above 110 degrees continues to strain power grids nationwide. Water rationing enters its 5th month in the southwest as Lake Mead reaches record low levels. In international news, fighting continues over the remaining arable land in... The voice cut out, replaced by a weather report for Minnesota. But the date the announcer gave was April 15, 2024. I shut the radio off with shaking hands. When I turned it on again, there was nothing but the usual local station. That night, I heard children laughing outside my window. But when I looked, there was only moonlight on empty snow. The laughter lingered, echoing through trees that suddenly seemed too thin, too few. In the morning, I met Jake at the strange valley again. He had arranged his equipment in a circle. In the center was something that looked like a window hanging. In the air, a window that showed the same forest, but different. In that other forest, the trees were fewer, the ground bare in patches. "What is that?" I whispered. "A connection," Jake said. "Between now and then. Between what is and what will be." A blizzard hit suddenly, the snow whipping around us. It stung my face and hands, feeling gritty and wrong. When I looked at the flakes on my glove, they were gray, not white. "Contaminated," Jake said, confirming my thoughts. "Industrial pollutants, coal ash, microplastics. But we don't have those things here," I said. "Not in these amounts." "Not yet," Jake replied. We made it back to my snowmobile, but it wouldn't start. Jake opened the gas tank and smelled it, then recoiled. "Fuel contamination," he said. "The gasoline has deteriorated. It's like it's been sitting for 20 years, not days." We had to walk back through the worsening storm. The forest felt different now, threatening. The trees seemed to lean in, branches reaching like clawed hands. And somewhere in the swirling snow, I heard something moving, something big. "Jake," I said, my voice barely audible over the wind. "What's really happening here?" He looked at me, snow collecting on his eyelashes. "Time is thin here, Delilah. The future is bleeding into the present, and something from that future has found its way through." "What kind of something?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. A howl cut through the storm, the same sad, lonely cry I'd heard before. But closer now. Much closer. "That," Jake said, pulling me forward through the snow, "is what we need to find before it finds us." We trudged through snow up to our knees, the wind cutting through my coat like it wasn't even there. The howling grew louder, then stopped completely. The sudden silence was worse than the noise. "There," Jake whispered, pointing ahead. At first, I thought it was a person, someone tall and thin, standing perfectly still among the trees. But as we got closer, I realized how wrong I was. The creature stood on two legs, but that's where any resemblance to a human ended. Its body was ice-thin, skin stretched tight over bones that seemed too long, too angular. Parts of it looked solid, while others faded in and out like mist. But its eyes, they were the worst part. Human eyes, filled with a hunger so deep it made my chest hurt just to see it. "What is it?" I breathed, unable to look away. "The locals might call it a Wendigo," Jake said quietly. "A spirit of hunger and winter. But it's more than that. It's a refugee." "From where?" "From when?" he corrected. "About 2045, I think." The creature's form shifted as we watched. One moment it looked almost human, the next like a deer or wolf, then something else entirely. Animals I didn't recognize. Then it spoke. The voice was Jake's, but wrong, like a recording played at the wrong speed. "They won't listen," it said, the words echoing strangely. "They never listen until it's too late." I reached for my gun, but Jake grabbed my wrist. "Don't. It won't help." The Wendigo took a step toward us. I fired anyway, the shot deafening in the winter silence. The bullet seemed to slow down as it approached the creature, then hung suspended in the air before dropping harmlessly to the snow. "You cannot harm what doesn't fully exist yet," the creature said, this time in a voice that sounded like many people speaking together. "I am what is coming." "What do you want?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. to show you." It said simply. It raised one long, bony arm and pointed behind us. I turned to look and gasped. The forest had changed. The trees were gone, replaced by stumps that stretched as far as I could see. The ground was bare and cracked. No snow, no plants, nothing living at all. The sky above was a sickly yellow-grey. "This is what comes," the Wendigo said. "This is what your kind brings." I blinked, and the dead landscape was gone, replaced by our normal forest. But now I could see both at once, the healthy trees of 1971 and the ghostly outlines of their stumps from some future time. "It's trying to warn us," Jake said softly. "That's why it's here. Not to harm, but to show what will happen if nothing changes." The creature nodded, its movements jerky like a film run too fast. "I don't understand," I said. "Warn us about what?" Instead of answering, the Wendigo opened its mouth impossibly wide. From inside came sounds, chainsaws, bulldozers, the crack of falling trees, animals crying out, floods rushing, fires roaring, the sounds of a dying world. "Make it stop!" I cried, covering my ears. But the noise was inside my head now. Jake grabbed my shoulders. "It can't stop, Delilah, that's the point. It won't stop unless we do something now." The Wendigo closed its mouth, and blessed silence fell. It pointed at me, then at Jake. "Choose," it said. "See and act, or remain blind and comfortable." I looked at Jake, really looked at him for the first time. His clothes, his equipment, the knowledge in his eyes. "You're not from around here," I said slowly, "and I don't mean Minnesota." He met my gaze steadily. "No, I'm not." "When are you from, Jake?" 2024, he admitted quietly. "Where the wolves are dying and the forests are burning." The Wendigo made a sound like ice cracking and began to move away, deeper into the trees. It was showing us something, a path through time itself. "We have to follow it," Jake said. "It's showing us the convergence point, where everything connects, where we might be able to change things." "Change what things?" I asked, but I was already walking after the creature, drawn by something I couldn't explain. "The future," Jake said simply. "My present, the world that's coming if we don't stop it." As we followed the Wendigo, the forest around us flickered. Between states, healthy and green, then barren and dead, then somewhere in between. Past, future, and possible presents all existing at once. "Why me?" I asked as we walked. "Why show me all this?" "Because you can tell the story," Jake said. "You can make people see what's coming." The Wendigo stopped ahead, turning to face us. Behind it was a clearing I recognized, the same place where I'd seen the strange equipment before, but now it was filled with swirling light, like the northern lights had come down to Earth. "This is it," Jake whispered, "the convergence point." The Wendigo's eyes locked with mine, and in them I saw a question. Was I brave enough to face what came next? The clearing pulsed with light, casting strange shadows on the snow. The Wendigo stood at its edge, waiting. I felt cold sweat freezing on my back despite the winter chill. "What happens now?" I asked Jake, my voice barely a whisper. "Now you choose," he said. "We all do." The Wendigo raised its arms, and suddenly the clearing wasn't just one place anymore. It was many places, all stacked on top of each other like slides in a projector. I saw the forest as it was now in 1971, then as it would be in 1985, with fewer trees, then 2001, with strange machines cutting down what remained. Then 2024, Jake's time, where the land was mostly bare with just a few struggling pines. And finally, 2045, a wasteland where nothing grew at all. "This is what we've done," Jake said, his voice breaking. "What we're doing right now, every day." The Wendigo moved toward us again, but this time I wasn't afraid. It reached out one long finger and touched my forehead. Images flooded my mind. Factories dumping chemicals into rivers, skies black with smoke, animals dying on beaches covered in plastic, storms bigger than any I'd ever seen destroying entire cities. I saw melting ice and rising seas. I saw wars fought over the last clean water. I saw children starving because crops wouldn't grow in the broken soil, and I saw that it all started now, in my time, with choices people made thinking the consequences would never come. No, I whispered, tears freezing on my cheeks. We can't let this happen. The Wendigo nodded slowly. That's why I came back, Jake said, to try and change things. I've been leaving evidence, data about what's coming, but no one's listening. They need someone to make them see. My photos, I realized. The film that captures what can't be seen. Yes, Jake said, and your words. You're a journalist, Delilah. You know how to make people care. The Wendigo made that ice-cracking sound again and pointed to Jake's equipment, arranged around the clearing. It's a portal, Jake explained. A way back to my time. I've been jumping between 1971 and 2024, trying to change things. Has it worked? I asked. His silence was answer enough. The Wendigo growled, a sound like breaking trees. The lights in the clearing pulsed faster. Something's wrong, Jake said, checking his strange wrist device. The temporal field is collapsing. We need to act now. What do we do? Jake looked at me sadly. I have to go back. Plant the evidence where the right people will find it. And you have to decide what kind of person you want to be. I didn't understand at first. Then I looked at the Wendigo again and suddenly knew what it had been trying to tell me all along. To fight for the future, I had to kill something inside myself. The part that would rather look away, stay comfortable, pretend everything was fine. The cynical journalist who documented horror but did nothing to stop it. I have to change, I said quietly. Become something else. Jake nodded. It will cost you everything. Your career. Maybe your freedom. People don't like being told their way of life is destroying the world. The Wendigo stepped closer, its form shifting again. For a moment it looked like me, a hollow, hungry version of me that had given up hope. I've seen what giving up looks like, I said, straightening my spine. I choose to fight. Jake smiled, but it was sad. I knew you would. He gathered his equipment quickly, tossing me my camera. Take pictures of everything. The portal, the Wendigo, the future visions. Get the evidence. I started snapping photos. As Jake worked, the Wendigo watched us both, its eyes reflecting the swirling lights. It's ready, Jake said finally. He stepped toward the center of the clearing, where the lights were brightest. I'm going back to 2024. I'll make sure the right people find what I've hidden. Will I see you again? I asked. No, he said simply. This jump will be my last. The energy it takes, it's too much for a human body to handle more than a few times. I understood then what he was saying. You're dying. Already dying, he corrected. The world I come from is poison, but maybe yours doesn't have to be. The lights grew brighter. The Wendigo howled, a sound that contained all the grief of a dying world. Jake stepped into the center of the light. For a moment he seemed to glow from within. Then he looked at me one last time. Tell the story, Delilah. Make them see. The light flashed blindingly bright. When I could see again, Jake was gone. All his equipment lay scattered and smoking on the snow. The Wendigo remained, watching me, waiting. I understood now what I had to do. I would have to sacrifice my quiet life, my safety, maybe even my freedom. I would have to become a prophet of environmental doom, using what I'd seen to warn others. I'll do it, I told the Wendigo. I'll tell your story, our story. The creature nodded once, then began to fade like mist in morning sun. Before it disappeared completely, I took one final picture. As I stood alone in the clearing, I felt something shift inside me, The old Delilah, the observer who kept a safe distance from her stories, was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone who would fight with everything she had to change the future. I gathered Jake's notes and my film and headed back toward the ranger station. I had work to do, articles to write, truth to tell. 6 months. Later, my first major environmental expose was published. It revealed how chemical companies, including my ex-husband's, were poisoning the land and water with toxins that would remain for generations. The companies called me crazy, said my evidence was faked, but I kept writing, kept investigating, kept fighting. 3 years after that, I died in what the papers called a tragic car accident on a clear, dry day with no other vehicles involved. But my notes survived. My photos survived. The truth survived. And somewhere in Superior National Forest, the Wendigo waits, showing glimpses of possible futures to those with eyes to see, hoping that one day the vision of desolation it carries will never come to pass. My name is Ezekiel Morrison, but everyone just calls me Zeke. I've been a park ranger here in Pisgah National Forest for almost 7 years now. Before that, I was a medic in the Korean War. I thought I'd seen the worst of what people could do to each other over there. Turns out I was wrong. The Blue Ridge Mountains are beautiful this time of year. Most folks just see the colorful leaves and rolling hills. They don't know what's hidden deep in these woods. About 3 miles from my cabin, tucked away where no hiking trails go, there's an old building. It doesn't show up on any maps. The government says it was never there, but I know better. It was a CIA place where they took volunteers and did things to them, terrible things that changed them, made them hungry for things no person should ever want. Sometimes at night, when the wind is still, I can hear the whippoorwills singing. Most people think it's just bird calls, but their pattern, it matches. Something I heard once, recordings they used on people in that facility. The birds learned it somehow, nature copying the worst of man. My grandmother was full Cherokee. She taught me about these mountains before she passed, how they're sacred, how they should be respected. Sometimes I swear I can feel my blood responding when I'm near that old facility, like my Cherokee ancestors are trying to warn me. There's an owl that lives in what used to be the watchtower, nature reclaiming what man abandoned. But that owl doesn't hoot like normal owls. Its call sounds almost human. Tonight's a harvest moon. The forest is lit up almost like daytime, but with that strange orange glow that makes shadows look deeper than they are. I'm walking my usual patrol route, but I keep my eyes on the ground more than usual during harvest moons. The light shows things that are normally hidden, like the small mounds scattered throughout the forest, graves, shallow ones. I've never dug them up. Some things are better left buried. My radio crackles sometimes when I pass certain spots, picks up things it shouldn't, voices speaking in code, military transmissions that shouldn't still be broadcasting. But they are, like echoes from the past that can't quite fade away. A family of raccoons scurries across my path. They're fat and healthy looking, too healthy for this time of year. I try not to think about what they've been feeding on in those shallow graves. The temperature drops suddenly as I near a clearing. It's always colder here, even in summer. This is where they kept them, the ones they experimented on. The building is mostly gone now, just a foundation and some crumbling walls. But the cold remains. The rhododendron grows thick around one hillside, thicker than it should. I've never gone past those bushes, but I know what they hide, the entrance to where the worst of it happened, underground labs where they turned people into something else. I touch the scar on my left wrist absent-mindedly. It's a bite mark, human teeth. I got it trying to restrain a patient in Korea, but I've seen the same pattern on dead animals in these woods. The exact same pattern. Human teeth, but not used in a human way. The moon is directly overhead now. My patrol is almost done. Doctor, Chen will be waiting for me back at the ranger station. She thinks she's studying wilderness therapy. Poor woman, has no idea what she's really looking at. And I can't tell her. Not yet. Not until I'm sure. Because if I'm right about what's happening in these mountains, we're all in danger. Not just from what's hiding in these woods, but from the people who put it here. I never planned to come back to these mountains. After Korea, I just wanted peace and quiet. But life has funny ways of bringing you full circle. In the war, I patched up all kinds of wounds. Bullet holes, shrapnel, burns. But there were some patients that stuck with me, more than others. Men who came in with strange bite marks, American soldiers who'd been POWs. They never talked about what happened to them, but their eyes, they had a look I still see in my nightmares. What I didn't know then was that they weren't just POWs. They were test subjects. The enemy had tried things on them, and then our own government continued those tests when they got them back. I was just the medic who stitched them up in between. My grandmother saw it in me when I came home. "You've seen the white man's hunger," she told me. "The kind that doesn't just eat food, it eats souls." I thought she was just talking about war in general. Now I'm not so sure. I look down at my hands sometimes. The scars crisscross my palms and fingers. Defensive wounds, they call them. From when patients would lash out, one man bit clean through my thumb. The doctor said he was delirious from fever, but his eyes were clear when he did it. And he was trying to eat me. Not hurt me. Eat me. I keep my grandmother's silver knife with me always. She gave it to me before I shipped out to Korea. Said her mother used it to fight off hungry spirits back in the 1890s. I thought it was just a nice story, a family heirloom. But I've tried other knives on the things I've found in these woods. Only silver leaves a mark. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived 3 months ago. Smart lady. The government sent her to study how nature helps soldiers with PTSD. At least that's what her paperwork says. But I've seen her making notes that have nothing to do with therapy. She's looking for something specific. I just don't know what. Yet I don't talk much about my wife. Helen died 2 years ago. Car accident, they said, but it happened near Fort Detrick in Maryland, another government facility, and her body was cremated before I could see it. Too damaged, they told me. I didn't ask questions then. I should have. The locals don't talk to me much. They're nice enough, but they keep their distance. Mrs. Wilkins at the general store told me once, after too much blackberry wine, that my family name was known in these parts. Morrisons have been fighting things in these woods since before. My granddaddy was born, she said. She wouldn't say more. I can't help myself sometimes. When I find wounded animals in the forest, I have to try to save them, even when they're too far gone, even when it's kinder to let them die. I've always been that way. Fix what's broken, heal what's hurt, but some things can't be fixed. Some hurts go too deep. Sarah thinks she's documenting isolated cases. Hikers who got lost and went a little crazy from hunger and fear, hunters who drank bad water and hallucinated, but she doesn't see the pattern yet, how they all crossed paths with something in those woods, something that's getting bolder. I've been letting her think I'm just helping with her research, that I believe we're just treating folks with PTSD who had bad experiences in the wilderness. But we're not. We're tracking something, and it's tracking us right back. The government has buried a lot of things in these mountains. Secrets, chemicals, people, and something is digging them all up one by one. And the worst part? I'm starting to think whatever's out there, it has every right to be angry. It started with the Johnson farm last week. 3 cows dead. Not just dead, torn apart. I've seen animal attacks before, but this was different. The cuts were too clean in some places, too messy in others. It reminded me of something I saw in Korea, how the bodies looked when they found. Those POWs who'd been in the experimental camps. I didn't tell Sarah what I thought, just took pictures and nodded when she said it must be bears. But bears don't leave marks like that, and bears don't take the time to arrange the bones in neat piles. The forest feels wrong lately, empty. The deer are gone, so are the foxes. Even the squirrels have moved to the edges of the woods. Animals know when to run. They can smell danger better than we can. 2 days ago, I found something strange at An old campsite. Someone had set up 3 chairs in a triangle. In the middle was a small table with straps attached to it, just like the evaluation stations they used in the military hospitals, where they'd decide which soldiers were fit to return to duty and which ones needed more treatment. It wasn't hikers who left that there, it was a message. For me, there's a smell in certain parts of the forest now. Sweet, but wrong. Like meat, left too long in the sun, mixed with something chemical. The kind of smell that clings to your clothes and doesn't wash out for days. It's strongest near the old facility. Like whatever they buried there is coming to the surface. The trees are changing too, not just with the seasons. There are carvings appearing on the trunks. Numbers and letters that look like the ID codes they used to give test subjects. I recognized one of them, KW 7734. I treated a man with that number tattooed on his wrist in Korea. He wasn't supposed to be back on American soil. But here was his number, carved into a tree 50 yards from my cabin. My radio picks up more than static now. Late at night I can hear voices giving instructions, the same instructions they used in those experiments. Survival requires adaptation. Adaptation requires sacrifice. Sacrifice requires consumption. Over and over. Sarah heard it too last night. She looked scared for the first time since she got here. The old Cherokee songs my grandmother taught me sound different when I sing them in the woods now. The echoes come back wrong, like someone else is singing along, using my voice to say other things. Things in Korean, names of men I treated, places where the experiments happened. Yesterday, Sarah set up her equipment in the old church clearing. When I found her, she'd arranged her medical bags in a circle around a table she'd made from old boards. The boards had government stamps on them, from lab furniture. She said she found them in the woods and thought they'd be useful. She didn't notice the stamps, or she's pretending not to. The fog rolled in this morning, thick and low to the ground. Most folks would just say it's normal mountain weather, but I could hear whispers in it. Some in Korean, some in Cherokee, asking for help, warning me to run, telling me it's too late. Old man Parker's prize horse died last night. The vet's baffled. The horse was healthy yesterday. Today it's dead with needle marks along its neck, just like the ones they used to give the volunteers when they were ready for the next phase of testing. Something's coming out of those woods, something that knows me, something that's been waiting. And I think Sarah knows more than she's letting on. Her papers don't look like research notes anymore. They look like warnings. I saw it last night, after months of feeling watched, of finding signs, of knowing something was out there. I finally saw it. I was checking the eastern boundary of the park. There had been reports of strange lights, and I thought maybe it was just teenagers camping where they shouldn't be. I was wrong. It looked like a man at first, standing with his back to me, beside a fallen oak. He was wearing what seemed like an old army jacket, Korean War era. Then he turned around and I felt my blood freeze. I knew his face, Private James Miller. He'd been one of my patients in Korea, the one they brought in half dead, starving, his body covered in bite marks. The one who wouldn't tell us what had happened to him in that camp. The one who disappeared from the hospital one night. The official report said he escaped and was never found. But here he was, in the Pisgah forest, staring at me with eyes that glowed slightly in the darkness. Not human eyes, not anymore. "Doc Morrison," he said, his voice exactly as I remembered it, but with something else underneath, something older. "You didn't save me." I reached for my radio, but my hand wouldn't move. My body knew this wasn't something the Rangers could help with. "What are you?" I asked. He smiled, and his teeth were wrong, too many, too sharp. "I'm what they made me, what they'll make all of us eventually." He took a step toward me, and that's when I saw the marks on his arms. Fresh bite marks. Some looked self-inflicted, others couldn't have been. They broke something in me, Doc. Broke it and rebuilt it their way. Made me hungry for things no man should want. His voice changed then, shifted between Miller's voice and something else, an accent that reminded me of my grandmother, the Cherokee words she used to say when she thought I wasn't listening. "Your blood remembers," he said in that double voice. "Your people fought against this long before the white men brought their science to make it worse." He knew things about the experiments I'd seen parts of but never fully understood. How they'd used starvation and drugs and fear to break people down. How they'd conditioned them to do terrible things to survive. How they'd turned men into monsters to see if they could control them. I pulled my grandmother's silver knife from my belt. The thing that looked like Miller hissed and stepped back. "That blade," it said, "the old woman blessed it against spirits and men who become them, against government evil." I held the knife steady, even though my hand wanted to shake. "Are you here to kill me?" Miller, or the thing wearing Miller's shape, laughed. "I'm hunting, Doc. Hunting the ones who did this to me. To us. The ones who buried their mistakes in these mountains and thought they could walk away." He pointed toward the direction of the old facility. "They're coming back. Did you know that? Setting it all up again. Your doctor friend is part of it." I felt cold all over. "Sarah? She's documenting, gathering data, seeing how long their creations last in the wild." His form shifted slightly, becoming less solid at the edges. "I've been watching you both, deciding." "Deciding what?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "Whether you're with them," he said, "or with us." From the woods behind him came sounds, mechanical hums that shouldn't be there, screams that echoed too long. The forest seemed to stretch and twist, revealing paths I'd never seen before, paths that led to half-buried concrete structures, to pits filled with bones, to doorways that shouldn't exist anymore. "You have a choice to make, Doc," Miller said, his body now flickering between human form and something taller, thinner, hungrier. "Help me hunt the ones who made me this way, or become my next meal." He stepped closer, and the smell hit me. That sweet rot smell mixed with chemicals, the smell of the facility, the smell of death. "They killed your wife, you know," he whispered. "She found out too much at Fort Detrick. Just like your doctor friend is finding out too much now. They don't leave witnesses, Doc. They just leave experiments." I gripped the knife tighter, but found I couldn't raise it against him. Not yet. Because deep down, I was afraid he was telling the truth. Dawn was breaking when I made it back to the ranger station. My mind was racing with everything Miller, or whatever he had become, had told me. I needed to talk to Sarah, to find out if she was really part of this. She was in her office, surrounded by papers and photos. Maps of the area with red circles marking spots where strange things had happened. Photos of the dead animals, of the carvings in the trees, and photos I hadn't seen before. Of men in suits standing outside the old facility. Recent photos. "Sarah," I said, and she jumped, quickly covering the pictures. "We need to talk." The look on her face told me everything. Fear, but not of me. Of being caught. "How much do you know?" I asked. She hesitated, then sighed. "More than I should, less than I need to." She pulled out a thick folder from under her desk. "I'm not who you think I am, Zeke. You're not studying wilderness therapy." "No." She opened the folder. Inside were documents with government seals, project names, dates going back to the Korean War. "I'm documenting what happened here. What's still happening." My heart sank. "So you are working for them?" "Not anymore." Her eyes were clear, honest. "I started out that way. They sent me to assess if any of their old projects were still active, if any of the subjects had survived. But the more I learned..." She shook her head. "What they did here was wrong, Zeke. What they're planning to do again is worse." I thought of Miller's words, of my wife. "They kill people who find out too much." Sarah nodded. "That's why I've been careful. gathering evidence, building a case. That's too big to bury. She spread photos across the desk. These people were human once. The government broke something in them, made them into weapons, then abandoned them when they couldn't be controlled. I had to choose, trust Sarah and help expose the truth, or protect her by walking away. But I knew there was no walking away anymore, not for either of us. There's something out there, I told her, something that used to be a soldier named Miller. I treated him in Korea. I know, she said quietly. He's not the only one. There are at least 7 of them still alive in these mountains. The reports. Call them Wendigo subjects. They used Cherokee legends as a blueprint, twisted people until they became the monsters from the stories. A cold anger filled me. All these years I thought I was just a medic helping wounded men, but I had been part of it, patching them up so they could be broken again. We need to get this evidence out, I said. Sarah looked up sharply. We can't leave yet. They're coming, tonight, reopening the facility. We need to document it, catch them in the act. That's when we heard cars on the gravel road outside, black SUVs with government plates, men in suits carrying cases that looked like scientific equipment. Too late, Sarah whispered. They're already here. We grabbed what evidence we could and slipped out the back door into the forest. The forest that was now hunting ground for both monsters and men. Night fell as we made our way to the old facility. The full moon lit our path through the trees. We could see lights ahead, hear voices. They were setting up equipment in the ruins. We just need pictures, Sarah said. Proof they're restarting the program. We crept closer. I could see men in lab coats, armed guards, and cages, empty cages waiting to be filled. Sarah pulled out her camera and started taking pictures. The click seemed impossibly loud in the quiet night. A guard turned our way, shouted. Gunshots split the air. We ran deeper into the woods, toward the rhododendron thicket that hid the entrance to the underground labs. It was our only chance to hide. But as we reached the thicket, Miller was there, no longer trying to look human. His body stretched and twisted, teeth gleaming in the moonlight. You chose, he said, his voice echoing strangely. More shouts behind us. The guards were getting closer. Help us, I said to Miller. They're the ones who did this to you. For a moment he seemed to consider. Then gunfire erupted again. A bullet hit Sarah in the back. She fell forward, her camera skidding across the ground. It wasn't the creature. That killed her. It was the men who turned people into creatures. As Sarah lay dying, she pressed a memory card into my hand. The evidence, she gasped. Make them pay. Miller howled, a sound of rage and hunger and loss. He charged past us, toward the men with guns. Screams followed, terrible screams. I held Sarah until she was gone. Then I remembered my grandmother's teachings, the ritual to cleanse a spirit, to free it from the hunger that bound it. I took out my silver knife and began to sing the old Cherokee words, drew the symbols in the earth that my grandmother had shown me. Miller returned, covered in blood. Not all of it human. He'd been shot, wounded, but still he came for me. They'll send more, he growled, always more. I know, I said, continuing the ritual. But you don't have to be their weapon anymore. He lunged at me. I drove the silver knife into his heart, still singing the ancient words. His body twisted, fought, changed shape again and again. But the silver held him. The words bound him. Let go of the hunger, I told him. It's not yours. It was put in you. Something changed in his eyes. Recognition. Relief. The monster faded, leaving just the man. Just Miller, as he had been before. Thank you, Doc, he whispered. And then he was gone. Truly gone. Free. I buried Sarah at dawn, then made my way back to civilization with her evidence, to newspapers, to people who could spread the truth too, widely to be silenced. The government denied everything, of course, but the pictures didn't lie. The documents couldn't be explained away. That was 5 years ago. I'm not a park ranger anymore. I work with Cherokee activists now, fighting to protect sacred lands from government projects, fighting to expose what they did to people like Miller, to my wife. They'll come for me eventually. I know too much, have said too much, but the truth is out there now, spreading like fire. The hungry ghosts have been laid to rest. And if more come, more monsters made by men, I'll be waiting, with my grandmother's silver knife and the old songs on my lips. My name is Cornelius Washington, though most folks just call me Neil. I've been a park ranger here in Point Pleasant, West Virginia for almost 3 years now. The year is 1978, and there's something wrong with this place. I felt it the moment I arrived, but lately the feeling's been getting stronger. Today started like any other day. I drove past those old TNT bunkers on my patrol route. People say they're just abandoned military storage, but I know better. Late at night, when nobody's watching, I've seen government trucks coming and going. I've found papers blown by the wind, documents about experiments on how to control people's minds and behavior. I keep these findings in my notebook, though sometimes I wonder if I should burn them. From where I stand now, I can see the Ohio River flowing past those big industrial plants. The water looks normal, but sometimes it shimmers with strange colors. Nobody seems to care that the factories dump their waste directly into the river. It's no coincidence that the poorer neighborhoods and places where most Black and Mexican families live are downstream. They'll be drinking this poison for decades, and nobody with power cares enough to stop it. Just this morning, a bright red cardinal landed on that small stone marker by the river bend. I don't remember that marker being there before, and the date carved on it is years in the future. When I blinked, both the bird and the marker were gone. But I remember the names I saw listed there. Names of people who haven't died yet, victims of something that hasn't happened. The sunset looks wrong tonight. The sky is burning with oranges and reds that remind me of fires. Not natural fires, but the kind that consume entire city blocks during riots. I've never seen a city burn, but somehow I know exactly what it looks like. And I know it's coming. Walking back toward my truck, I passed an old payphone. It started ringing as I walked by, though nobody uses these phones anymore. When I picked it up, I heard voices talking about tracking people, monitoring calls, and building files on potential threats to national security. They were discussing me by name. There's an old barn owl that circles the empty field behind the community center. Every night it flies in the same pattern, around and around a spot where nothing stands. But in my dreams, I see that spot clearly. It's where 5 unarmed black men will be shot by police officers who claim they feared for their lives. I haven't figured out when this happens, but I know it's real. The temperature today hit 98 degrees, though the Weather Service reported only 78. The extra heat seems to follow me, like the air itself is getting ready to boil over with the tensions building in our country. This evening, I walked through the cattail marshes, looking for a missing hiker. Instead, I found a patch where nothing grows. The mud there is darker, and sometimes I swear I can see faces looking up from beneath the surface. Faces of people fighting for their rights, people who disappeared and were never found. Strangest of all, every clock I look at shows a different time. My watch says 3:15, the clock in my truck says 4:30, and the one at the ranger station says 2:45. It's like time itself can't agree on when we are, because justice doesn't happen at the same time for everyone. Some folks have been waiting hundreds of years already. Something is coming to Point Pleasant, something that knows what's happening and what's going to happen. And for some reason, it wants me to know too. I wasn't always a park ranger. Before this job, I was a civil rights activist down in Alabama and Mississippi. Those were hard days. I still carry the scars from when police beat me with batons during a peaceful march in '65. My right knee never healed right. And sometimes, when it rains, the pain reminds me of lying on that hot pavement while officers stood over me. My wife Elaine couldn't take the worry anymore. Every time you walk out that door, Neil, I think you might not come back, she told me the night she left. She took our daughter Tanya with her back to her mama's house in Detroit. I understand why she left. The phone calls threatening our family had gotten worse, and someone threw a brick through Tanya's bedroom window. Maybe someday they'll come back, but for now, this lonely ranger cabin is home. My camera goes everywhere with me. It's an old Nikon my father gave me. Through its lens, I've captured things that make a pattern. The same kinds of injustice happening over and over. Pictures of angry white men shouting at black children trying to go to school. Pictures of police standing by while businesses in black neighborhoods burn. Sometimes when I develop the photos, I see things I didn't remember shooting. Images of places I've never been, of riots that haven't happened yet. Washington, you seeing ghosts again today? Tommy Rivera asks me as he sets up his surveying equipment. Tommy's the county engineer, about 10 years younger than me. His parents came from Puerto Rico, and he understands what it means to be treated like you don't belong. Not ghosts, Tommy. Just shadows of what's coming, I say, trying to smile. Like I'm joking. I don't tell him about the notebook where I write down everything I see. Pages and pages of connections between what's happening now and what will happen later. Worse things, bigger injustices, systems of oppression growing stronger instead of weaker. I touch the small medal I keep in my pocket. I got it after marching. In Selma. Sometimes it gets so hot it nearly burns my skin, especially when I'm looking at places where future pain will happen. The locals trust me more than they did when I first came. My grandmother's people lived in these hills for generations. When I talk, they listen, even if they think I'm a little strange. Washington men have always seen more than most. Old Mrs. Jenkins told me once, your daddy was the same way, and his daddy before him. At night, the dreams come. I see police in armor like soldiers, carrying weapons I've never seen before. I watch as prisons grow bigger than towns, filled mostly with black and brown faces. I see cameras watching everyone, everywhere. I wake up sweating, telling myself it's just stress, just my mind playing tricks after everything I've seen. But deep down, I know these aren't just dreams, they're warnings. Dr. Mitchell at the VA hospital says I have PTSD from my civil rights days. He gives me pills that are supposed to stop the visions, but they only make them stronger. I've stopped taking them. I need to see clearly now, even if what I'm seeing breaks my heart. You coming to the meeting tonight? Tommy asks as he packs up his gear. There's a civil rights gathering at the community center, people organizing to fight against the factory that wants to build even closer to the black neighborhood downstream. I'll be there, I promise. Even with everything else happening, the fight for justice doesn't stop. It never stops. What I don't tell Tommy is that I've seen the community center in my visions too. And whatever is coming, whatever has been trying to show me the future, it's going to be there tonight. The walk to my truck this morning stopped me cold. 7 dead blackbirds lay in a perfect circle near the parking lot. Their wings were spread out like they were pointing to something. I looked where they pointed and saw the old oak tree where Mr. Johnson's grandson was beaten up last month for talking to a white girl. But the birds weren't pointing at just that tree. They seemed to be marking spots all around town. The corner store where Mrs. Daniels wasn't allowed to shop, the bank that won't give loans to anyone from the east side, the school where they still treat black kids differently. I've never seen animals act this way before, but lately they've been gathering and watching. Yesterday, 3 deer stood perfectly still by the road for hours, their eyes following me. A group of raccoons sat in a line on the fence behind the ranger station. Even the fish in the river swim in strange patterns now, like they're trying to spell out words. On my drive to check the eastern trails, I passed an old Chevy that's been abandoned for years. As I drove by, its radio suddenly turned on, blasting a news report about police shooting unarmed black men in cities across America. The reporter mentioned dates from the 1980s, 1990s, and years I've never heard of. 2014, 2016, 2020. When I stopped and went back, The car was silent, its radio missing entirely. The air feels different too. There's a sharp smell like lightning has just struck, but with something else mixed in, something that makes my skin crawl. It reminds me of the time I got hit with a police baton that had electricity running through it. But that technology doesn't exist yet. At least, I don't think it does. Last night, I found some of my photographs had changed. Pictures I took of empty streets now showed crowds of angry people holding signs about justice. One photo of the town hall now showed it surrounded by police in riot gear I've never seen before. Written across the back of each changed photo was the year 2020. The radio in my Ranger truck keeps changing stations on its own. Sometimes it catches signals that can't possibly be real broadcasts. Emergency alerts about violence in cities that sound peaceful right now. Warnings about diseases spreading through crowded prisons. News about police being given military weapons to use against their own people. This afternoon, while checking the playground near the community center, I heard children laughing and playing. But when I rounded the corner, the playground was empty and covered in rust. For a moment, I saw it as it will be years from now. Abandoned, forgotten, the community around it destroyed by poverty and neglect. When I met Tommy later to help him finish his survey work, I noticed he had arranged his equipment in a strange pattern. His transit level, measuring tape and markers formed a perfect circle around what looked like a thin spot in the air, a place where I could almost see through to somewhere else. Through that spot, I glimpsed images of the same patterns repeating. Protests, violence, progress, then backlash, over and over across decades. "You see it too, don't you?" Tommy asked quietly, not looking up from his notebook. I couldn't answer. I just nodded. The fog rolled in early tonight, unusually thick, and moving against the wind. Inside it, I could see flickering images like an old movie projector, showing scenes from a terrible future. Cities on fire, police in military vehicles, people running from tear gas clouds. The images appeared and disappeared so quickly, I could barely make sense of them. My flashlight died as I approached the community center for the meeting. Then my watch stopped. The streetlights flickered and went out. Even the stars seemed dimmer. It was like all the electricity and light were being pulled towards something that was waiting for me. The community center stood dark against the night sky. The meeting would start soon, but I couldn't make myself walk those last few steps, because now I could feel it watching me. The thing that had been sending me these visions, these warnings. It was perched on the roof, its eyes glowing red in the darkness, and I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. I couldn't move. My feet felt like they were stuck in cement as I stared up at the thing on the roof. It was shaped like a man, but much bigger, maybe 7 feet tall with wide shoulders. Instead of arms, it had what looked like wings folded against its sides. But it was its eyes that held me in place. 2 glowing red circles that seemed to see right through me. "What are you?" I whispered, my voice shaking. It didn't speak, not with words. Instead, images flooded my mind. Hundreds, thousands of faces blending together. Black faces, brown faces, faces of people suffering across time. I recognized some from history books. Enslaved people, civil rights workers who disappeared, victims of lynchings. But many more were faces I didn't know, from times that haven't happened yet. I fell to my knees as a wave of sadness crashed over me. It wasn't my sadness, it was theirs. All of them. The creature was somehow carrying the pain of every victim of racism and injustice, past and future. "Why are you showing me this?" I gasped. The red eyes blinked, and suddenly I was seeing police officers in gear I didn't recognize, holding weapons that looked like something from a science fiction movie. They were facing crowds of protesters. In the vision, things got worse and worse, the violence spreading, the weapons getting bigger, the prisons growing, the hate deepening. I understood then. It wasn't just showing me what might happen. It was warning me. The creature, Mothman, that's what the locals called it when they'd spotted it before, spread its wings. They stretched wider than seemed possible, blocking out the night sky. When it moved, reality itself seemed to tear at the edges, like I was seeing through the present into different times all at once. I tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. This wasn't something I could fight or run from. It existed in the past, present, and future all at once. Its eyes flashed again, and this time I saw something different. Moments where people stood up, fought back, and changed things for the better. Small victories that prevented worse disasters. People making different choices that led to better outcomes. A sound like fabric ripping filled the air. The space between me and the community center seemed to split open, showing layers of time all stacked together. I could see the choices being made right now that would lead to either progress or disaster. "I'm just one man," I said, finding my voice again. "What can I do against all of this?" The creature tilted its head, and I felt a strange sense of respect. It saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. In its eyes, I watched my own life playing out across multiple possible futures. Futures where I either fought for change or gave up in despair. Suddenly, Tommy's voice called from behind me. "Neil, there you are. Meeting's about to start. Everyone's inside already." I turned to look at him, and when I turned back, the Mothman was gone. But the feeling of its presence lingered, along, with a certainty that I had to make a choice right now that would affect more lives than I could imagine. "Neil, you okay?" Tommy put his hand on my shoulder. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost," I said quietly. "Something else. Something that's trying to help us." Tommy followed my gaze to the now empty roof. "The meetings are important, but there's something bigger happening, isn't there? Something you've been seeing." I nodded slowly. "I think we're standing at a crossroads, Tommy, and whatever choice we make tonight is going to echo for a long time." As we walked toward the community center door, I felt the air grow heavy with a sense of danger. The Mothman might have disappeared, but its warning remained. Something was coming, something that would test whether I was truly ready to fight for a better future, no matter the cost. The community center was packed. About 30 people had shown up for the meeting, mostly folks from the neighborhoods downstream from the factories. Mrs. Johnson was speaking about the new chemical plant they wanted to build even closer to the black neighborhoods. "They wouldn't dare put this near the white schools on the north side," she said, her voice strong despite her 70 years. I tried to focus, but my mind kept going back to what the Mothman had shown me. This wasn't just about one factory or one town. This was about patterns that would repeat and grow worse if we didn't stop them now. Halfway through the meeting, I felt it again, that electric feeling in the air. The lights flickered. A deep rumble shook the floor. Probably just a truck. "On the highway," someone said, but I knew better. I stood up, interrupting Mrs. Johnson. "We need to leave now." People stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Neil, what are you talking about?" Tommy asked. The rumble came again, stronger this time. A crack appeared in the wall behind me. "The Silver Memorial Bridge," I said, the words coming to me from somewhere beyond my own understanding. "It's going to collapse." The bridge was right next to us, spanning the Ohio River. If it fell, it would crush the community center and everyone in it. "That bridge was just inspected last year," a man objected. "They didn't check the right places," I said, remembering images the Mothman had shown me. Rust eating away at support cables, concrete crumbling underwater, where no one could see. "Please, we have to go now." Tommy stood up beside me. "I know this man," he told the crowd. "If Neil Washington says we're in danger, then we're in danger." People began gathering their things, murmuring nervously. The building shook again, harder. "Out the back door!" I shouted. "Away from the river!" I helped Mrs. Johnson while Tommy organized everyone else. As the last person left, I heard a terrible groaning sound from outside, metal stretching beyond its limits. "The bridge," Tommy whispered, his eyes wide with fear. We ran outside to see the silver memorial bridge swaying dangerously. A support cable snapped with a sound like a gunshot. "We need to warn any cars still on the bridge," Tommy said, already running toward it. "Tommy, no!" I called after him. But he was already sprinting up the entrance ramp. I saw it all unfolding like the Mothman had already shown me. Tommy running onto the bridge, waving his arms to stop a bus full of people, the bridge giving way beneath him. I could stay safe with the others, or follow Tommy and risk everything. In that moment, I understood what the Mothman had been trying to tell me, that fighting for justice always comes with a cost, but doing nothing costs even more. I ran after Tommy. The bridge was shaking violently now. Tommy had reached a Greyhound bus, stopped in the middle, and was helping passengers out. I recognized them. They were civil rights workers coming to join our movement. "Get them off the bridge!" Tommy shouted when he saw me. I herded the people towards safety, while Tommy went back for the driver, who was stuck in his seat. The last support cable snapped with a sound like the world ending. "Tommy!" I screamed as the bridge began to fold in on itself. He pushed the driver toward me with all his strength. I caught the man and pulled him to solid ground just as the middle section of the bridge broke free. Tommy didn't have time to jump. Our eyes met for 1 second, just long enough for him to nod, like he understood what was happening and accepted it. Then he was gone, falling with the bridge into the dark water below. The community center was crushed under tons of concrete and steel, but everyone who had been inside was safe because we'd gotten them out in time. 23 people on the bridge were saved too, but not Tommy, not my friend. 3 days later, after they'd pulled his body from the river, I stood at the edge of the water. The Mothman appeared one last time, perched on what remained of the bridge. "You knew," I said, not even afraid anymore. "You knew he would die." The creature's red eyes seemed sad now. It spread its wings, as if to say there were some things even it couldn't change. "But you also knew we would save the others," I continued, understanding flowing through me. "You knew I needed to see what happens when we fight back, even when it costs us everything." The Mothman nodded once, then dissolved into the night sky like it had never been there. I picked up my camera and took a picture of the broken bridge. When I developed it later, the image showed not just the bridge, but shadows of all the future struggles to come and the people who would stand up to face them. I knew then what I had to do. I couldn't bring Tommy back, but I could make sure. His sacrifice meant something. I could use what the Mothman had shown me to help people prepare for what was coming. That night, I started writing down everything I'd seen, every warning, every vision of the future. I would spend the rest of my life fighting the battles the Mothman had shown me, using my knowledge to prevent as many disasters as I could. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I still feel it watching over us. Not a monster, but a guardian, trying to break the cycles of injustice before they destroy us all. Tommy knew that some things are worth dying for. Now I know that some things are worth living for too, even when the fight seems impossible, especially then. My name is Antonio Vasquez, but everyone calls me Tony. I've been a park ranger here in the Everglades for almost 5 years now. Before that, I was a Navy SEAL, but that's a story for another time. The Everglades is a special place. It's like nowhere else on Earth. Miles of sawgrass marsh stretch out as far as you can see, hiding what's happening underneath. The water looks clean on top, but I know better. Farmers and big companies dump their waste upstream, and it all flows down here, poisoning everything. This morning started like any other. The air was thick and sticky, the kind of humidity that makes your clothes cling to your skin within minutes. I took my airboat out just after sunrise, when the light turns the water into liquid gold. But something felt different today. The sounds were off. Usually, the Everglades is alive with noise. Birds calling, insects buzzing, the occasional splash of fish or alligators. Today, though, the birds sounded stressed, their calls more frantic than normal. Some species that should be common were missing entirely. I've noticed fewer of them each year as their homes get destroyed and the water gets more polluted. I stopped the airboat near a cluster of cypress trees to check some water samples. That's when I saw the anhinga, what some folks call a water turkey. It was perched on a branch, wings spread wide to dry in the morning sun. But something wasn't right. Its feathers had a strange sheen to them, and it seemed sluggish. I've seen this before. Birds contaminated with pesticides from the sugar farms up north. The smell hit me next. Beyond the normal swamp smells of mud and plants and decay, there was something else. Something chemical and sharp that didn't belong. The summer heat made it worse, turning the water into a steaming pot that released all those toxic vapors into the air. I fired up the airboat again and headed deeper into the park. The airboat itself always makes me feel a bit guilty. Sure, it's the best way to get around out here, but the noise scares the wildlife, and it feels like just another way humans are barging into places we don't fully understand. As I navigated through a narrow channel, I spotted a manatee and her calf. The mother had scars from boat propellers across her back, but it was the baby that broke my heart. Its body was misshapen, with strange growths along its sides. Birth defects from all the chemicals in the water messing with its development. The temperature today was extreme, even for Florida in summer. These heat waves keep getting worse each year. The water levels were lower than they should be this time of year, too. All the drainage and development around the Everglades is slowly killing it, turning wetlands into shopping malls and housing developments. I turned the boat into a tunnel of mangroves, their roots creating an eerie cathedral above the water. These quiet backwaters are where people think they can get away with illegal dumping. I've found everything from old refrigerators to barrels of who knows what hidden among these roots. The mangroves try to filter it, but there's only so much they can do. That strange chemical smell was stronger here. It burned my nose and made my eyes water. I followed it to a small clearing where the water had a weird rainbow sheen. Nearby I spotted dead fish floating belly up. Whatever was in the water had killed them. This wasn't just agricultural runoff. This was deliberate dumping. I took out my sampling kit and collected some water. Emily would want to test it. Emily Santos is, well, she's important to me. She's a scientist studying how pollution affects the Everglades. But she's also interested in the stories people tell about this place. She says sometimes old legends have truth in them, warnings about respecting nature that we've forgotten. As I put away the sample bottles, I heard something move in the dense vegetation behind me. Something big. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, a feeling I haven't had since my days in combat. Something was watching me. And that's when I first started to wonder if maybe some of those old stories about the Everglades might be true after all. I wasn't always a park ranger. 8 years ago, I was Sergeant Antonio Vasquez, Navy SEAL, following orders and believing I was serving my country, until that night in South America. We were told it was a drug operation. It wasn't. It was a small village, home to people who had lived there for generations. They were in the way of a big mining company that wanted their land. My team and I, we were just tools. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. I still wake up hearing their screams. After that, I couldn't do it anymore. I left the military with honors they said I earned. The medals sit in a box I never open. For a while I was lost. My first marriage fell apart. Hard to be a husband when you can't even look at yourself in the mirror. Then I met Emily. She was studying water pollution in the Everglades, passionate about saving this place. Something about her dedication pulled me back to life. You protected the wrong things before, she told me once, so protect the right things now. So here I am, new marriage, new purpose. My military skills didn't go to waste after all. I know how to track, how to observe, how to wait. Now I use those skills to monitor illegal dumping, to protect endangered species, to preserve what's left of this amazing place. The small office I use at the ranger station is filled with maps marked with red pins, locations of suspected pollution sources. Where most rangers see just a beautiful wilderness, I see a battlefield. The enemy isn't some foreign threat, but our own greed and carelessness. I touch the dog tags I still wear around my neck, not mine. They belong to Martinez. He died in that village. Sometimes I wear them to remember what happens when you follow orders without questioning them. Tony, you out there? Emily's voice crackled over the radio, pulling me back to the present. Yeah, I'm at the East Channel. Found some more chemical dumping. Take samples and be careful. The research team spotted some strange tracks near the North Basin yesterday. I smiled a little. Emily's always had a thing for cryptids, mysterious creatures that might or might not exist. Lately, she's been obsessed with the Florida skunk ape, our local version of Bigfoot. Most rangers laugh it off as tourist nonsense, but Emily thinks these legends might have some basis in reality. You think your Bigfoot is leaving tracks for us now? I teased. I'm serious, Tony. Her voice dropped lower. The native people here had stories about guardian spirits that protected the land. What if these sightings increase when the ecosystem is under threat? What if it's not just a coincidence? I wanted to laugh it off, but something about that movement I'd sensed earlier kept me from doing so. 20 years in combat zones teaches you to trust your instincts, and mine were tingling now. I'll keep my eyes open, I promised, heading deeper in to check that spot where we found dead alligators last month. Be back before dark, she said. And Tony, if you see anything unusual, document it. I tucked the radio away and started the airboat again. The sun was higher now, beating down mercilessly. Sweat trickled down my back as I guided the boat through narrow waterways that only locals know exist. The thing is, I've always thought I was tracking illegal dumpers, poachers, maybe the occasional lost tourist. But what if I was wrong? What if there's something else out here? Something that's been here long before humans started destroying this place? I shook my head, trying to clear it. Emily's theories were getting to me. There's no such thing as swamp monsters or guardian spirits. Just people doing bad things to a fragile ecosystem, and people like me trying to stop them. Still, as I cut the engine to drift silently into a hidden lagoon, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched by something that wasn't human. And for the first time in years, I felt the old combat fear creeping up my spine. The knowledge that you're in someone else's territory and they know exactly where you are. I reached slowly for the rifle I keep on the boat, just in case the airboat wouldn't start. I pulled the cord again, muscles straining. Nothing, just a weak sputter, then silence. I checked it thoroughly before heading out this morning. Full tank, engine clean. There was no reason for it to fail now, 15 miles deep into the swamp. I popped open the engine cover and immediately recoiled. The smell was terrible, like rotten eggs mixed with chemicals. A thick, greenish slime coated several components, eating into the metal like acid. I'd never seen anything like it before. This wasn't normal engine trouble. Something, or someone, had done this. My radio crackled to life, making me jump. Tony, position check. It was Davis, another ranger. I'm stuck in Alligator Alley, I replied, using our nickname for this narrow stretch of water. Airboat's dead, some kind of corrosive substance in the engine. Corrosive, like someone sabotaged it? I hesitated. Not sure. Send the backup boat if I'm not back by sundown. I clicked off before he could ask more questions. The truth was, there shouldn't be anyone out here. I hadn't passed another boat all day, and these backwaters were too difficult to access on foot. As I examined the engine again, I noticed something odd. Animals were fleeing the area. Birds, taking flight, fish jumping, even the insects seemed to be clearing out. In my experience, wildlife only behaves that way when there's danger. The smell grew stronger, that putrid mix of swamp gas and something sharper, more chemical. I covered my nose with my bandana and looked around carefully. That's when I saw the marks on the cypress trees. At first, I thought it was just normal scarring, but these were too regular, too intentional. 3 parallel lines, deep in the bark, about 7 feet up. Too high for an alligator, too uniform, for random damage. My radio picked up fragments of a conversation I shouldn't have been able to hear. Voices discussing the eastern drainage and midnight disposal. Agricultural companies. The same ones Emily had been investigating for illegal dumping. Somehow their radio frequency was bleeding into mine. Can't risk another inspection, a voice said before fading into static. The sudden scream made me drop the radio. It wasn't human, at least not entirely. It started like an animal in pain, but transformed into something that raised the hair on my neck. High-pitched yet deep, agonized yet angry. It echoed across the water, impossible to pinpoint. I grabbed my rifle, clicking off the safety. My hands were steady, combat training kicking in, but my heart hammered against my ribs. "Hello?" I called out. "Park Ranger! Is anyone there?" Only silence answered. I turned slowly in a complete circle, scanning the dense vegetation. Nothing moved, except the gentle sway of marsh grass in the breeze. My satellite phone buzzed. A text from Emily. Found connection between sightings and pollution levels. All reported skunk-ape encounters within 1 mile of illegal dump sites. Not coincidence? Coming to meet you. Where are you? I texted back my location, suddenly wishing she would stay at the station. Something wasn't right out here. As the sun began to lower, the water around my stranded boat took on a strange glow, an unnatural blue-green phosphorescence that pulsed gently. I'd seen this before in areas with algae blooms caused by phosphate pollution. But never this. Bright, never this alive. I dipped my testing kit into the water. The pH indicator turned black, off the scale. This wasn't just pollution, this was toxic. I tried the engine again. Nothing. Looking more closely, I realized the problem wasn't mechanical failure. The fuel itself had changed, thickened, and darkened by something in the water. The wind shifted, carrying that terrible smell again, stronger now, and with it came a sound. A low, rhythmic thumping, like heavy footsteps through water, moving closer. I raised my rifle, scanning the approaching darkness. The footsteps stopped. A splash to my left made me swing around. Nothing visible, but the water rippled outward from something large that had just submerged. Another splash behind me, then another to the right. Whatever it was circling my boat. My satellite phone buzzed again. Emily. Tony. Getting. Strange readings. Water toxicity off charts where you are. Get out now. I looked at the dying sun, then at the dark water surrounding me. With the airboat dead, there was nowhere to go. That's when I saw it, just for a second before it ducked behind a mangrove thicket, tall, much taller than a man, covered in dark hair or fur, and the smell that rolled off it made my eyes water. The skunk ape wasn't just a story after all, and it had me surrounded. Night fell quickly in the Everglades, like someone had thrown a black blanket over the world. I had a flashlight, but I kept it off. Better to let my eyes adjust to the darkness than make myself an easy target. The splashing had stopped, but I could still feel something watching me. The air had grown thick with that chemical stench, making each breath burn in my lungs. If someone's out there, I called. I'm a park ranger. I'm armed. Show yourself. A low, rumbling sound answered. Not quite a growl, not quite a moan. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. I raised my rifle, pointing it toward the noise, when my satellite phone buzzed again. Tony, I'm following your GPS, about 30 minutes away. Can you signal? Emily? I wanted to tell her to turn back, but if I couldn't get the boat working, she was my only way out of here. As I reached for the phone, something massive erupted from the water beside the boat. The airboat rocked violently, nearly throwing me overboard. I caught a glimpse of dark fur, dripping with swamp water, and something else, a thick, oily substance that glowed faintly in the darkness. The smell hit me like a physical blow. That same chemical stink, but 100 times stronger. My eyes watered and my throat closed up. It was like being tear-gassed. I raised the rifle, but before I could aim, something struck the boat from below. I lost my balance and fell hard, the rifle clattering away from me. And then it rose up, the creature standing upright at the edge of the boat. In the dim moonlight, I could make out a massive shape, at least 7 feet tall. It was covered in long, matted hair, dripping with that glowing slime. Its face was hidden in shadow, but I could see eyes reflecting the moonlight, not with the red glow of an animal's eyes, but with something else, something almost human. "What are you?" I whispered. The creature made that sound again, that moan that seemed filled with pain. It raised one massive arm, and I braced myself for an attack, but instead it pointed, not at me, but past me, toward the direction I'd come from earlier today, toward the area where I'd found the worst pollution. "I don't understand," I said, slowly reaching for my fallen rifle. The creature's arm shot out, impossibly fast, grabbing my wrist. Its touch burned like fire, not with heat, but with something else, something chemical. I yelled in pain and tried to pull away, but its grip was like iron, and then something impossible happened. "Tony!" The voice, Emily's voice, came from the creature, but twisted, distorted, as if played through broken speakers. "Emily!" I gasped. "How do you know my name? Where is she?" The creature released my wrist and stepped back. The burning sensation remained, my skin red and blistered where it had touched me. "Dying," the creature said, in that horrible approximation of Emily's voice. Then it changed, becoming deeper, older, a voice I didn't recognize. "All dying." The air around us seemed to shimmer, and suddenly I wasn't seeing the polluted, damaged Everglades anymore. Instead, I saw this same spot as it must have been 100 years ago, pristine water teeming with life, the air clean and sweet. Then it flickered back to reality, the poisoned present. "What's happening?" I demanded. "What are you showing me?" The creature raised both arms now, and the vision expanded. I saw the Everglades shrinking year by year as humans drained it, built on it, polluted it. I saw chemicals pouring into the water, killing everything they touched. I saw the creature, itself changing. Once majestic and powerful, now sickened, its body absorbing the toxins, mutating in response. "Guardian," it said, this time in a voice that sounded ancient. "Last guardian." Understanding began to dawn. This wasn't just some undiscovered animal. This was something else, something connected to this place in ways I couldn't comprehend. And it was dying along with the ecosystem it protected. I reached for my pack slowly, keeping my eyes on the creature. It watched me but didn't move. From the pack, I pulled out the water samples I'd collected earlier. "This?" I asked, holding up a vial of contaminated water. "You're showing me this is killing everything?" The creature nodded, a shockingly human gesture. Then its head snapped up, looking past me. I heard it too. The distant sound of an airboat engine, Emily coming to find me. The creature backed away, moving toward the water. "Wait," I called. "I want to help. I need to understand." It paused, those eerily human eyes studying me. Then it reached out again, more gently this time, and touched my forehead. The visions came faster now, flashes of the past, present, and what might be the future. I saw the military operation that had haunted me for years, but differently. Now, saw how it connected to the same pattern of destruction happening here. I saw Emily working late in her lab, discovering connections between pollution levels and reported sightings of the skunk ape. I saw barrels being dumped in hidden corners of the swamp under cover of darkness, and I saw what would happen if nothing changed. The Everglades dying completely, and with it, this last guardian. When the vision stopped, I was on my knees in the boat, gasping for breath. The creature was gone, the water still where it had disappeared. But I knew it wasn't far, and I knew it hadn't shown itself to me by accident. The approaching airboat grew louder. Emily was almost here, and I had no idea how to explain what I'd just experienced, or the terrible choice I now faced. Emily's airboat appeared from around the bend, its searchlight cutting through the darkness. I waved my arms, guiding her toward my stranded boat. "Tony," she called as she pulled alongside. "Are you okay? You look terrible." I probably did. My wrist was blistered where the creature had grabbed me. My clothes were soaked with sweat and swamp water, and I must have had a wild look in my eyes. "Emily, we need to leave," I said, climbing into her boat. "Something's out here, something I can't explain." She studied my face, then looked at my injured wrist. "You saw it, didn't you? The skunk ape?" I nodded, not sure how to describe what I'd experienced. "It's not what people think," she said, excitement in her voice. "I've been analyzing the data for months. Every sighting coincides with major pollution events. It's like it appears when the ecosystem is under threat." "It's dying," I said quietly. "The whole swamp is dying, and it's dying with it." Emily opened her laptop, the screen illuminating her face in the darkness. "Look at these readings from today. Toxicity levels are off the charts in this area." She pointed to a map. "And the company responsible is Everglades Agricultural Industries. They've been dumping chemical waste here for years." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. That's who I heard on the radio earlier. "They're planning something big tonight," Emily said. "A major dump. I intercepted their communications." She looked up at me. "We need to catch them in the act, Tony. We need proof." I thought about the visions the creature had shown me. It's not just about catching them, it's about saving what's left. "What do you mean?" Before I could answer, the night air was split by that same terrible moan we'd heard earlier. Emily's eyes widened. "It's close," she whispered. "It showed me things," I said quickly. "Visions, the past, the future. What happens if we don't stop this?" I grabbed her hand. "Emily, it's more than just an animal. It's connected to this place somehow. It's trying to protect what's left." The water around us began to glow with that unnatural phosphorescence. Something large moved beneath the surface, circling our boat. "We need to go," I said, reaching for the airboat controls. Emily stopped me. "No, it could have hurt you earlier, but it didn't. It was trying to communicate." She looked out into the darkness. "It wants our help." Before I could argue, the creature surfaced beside our boat. Emily gasped, but didn't scream. In the light from her laptop, I could see it more clearly now. Its fur matted with oily residue, its body thin and sick-looking. But its eyes were intelligent, aware. "It's beautiful," Emily whispered. "I wouldn't have used that word. It was terrifying, alien, but also desperate." The creature made a sound, then pointed, just as it had before. This time I understood. "It wants us to follow it." Emily nodded, starting the airboat. "Then that's what we'll do." We followed the creature through narrow channels, deeper into the swamp than I'd ever gone before. The water grew thicker with pollution, the smell stronger. Finally, we emerged into a hidden lagoon, and what we saw there made us both freeze. 3 large boats were docked at a makeshift pier. Men in protective gear were unloading barrels, dumping their contents directly into the water. Everglades, Agricultural Industries, caught in the act. "We need to document this," Emily whispered, already taking photos with her camera. The creature watched from the water, its eyes reflecting hatred toward the men and their poison. One of the workers spotted us. "Hey, who's there?" Everything happened fast after that. The men scrambled for weapons. I pushed Emily down as shots rang out, bullets whizzing over our heads. "Go!" I shouted, starting the engine, but it was too late. A bullet hit the fuel tank, and suddenly the boat was on fire. We jumped into the water as our boat exploded behind us. The polluted water burned my skin, especially the blistered part where the creature had touched me. "Swim for the shore!" I yelled to Emily. We made it to a small island with an old chickie hut, one of the raised wooden platforms the Seminole people once used. Bullets thudded into the wood around us as we took cover. I had my service pistol, but we were outnumbered and outgunned. The men were advancing toward us in their boats, flashlights scanning the darkness. Then the water erupted. The creature attacked the nearest boat, capsizing it with one powerful blow. The men screamed, firing wildly as they fell into the water. "Tony!" Emily gasped beside me. "I don't feel right." I turned to her and my heart sank. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. At first I thought she'd been shot, but there was no blood. "It's the water," she said weakly. "The chemicals. I've been feeling sick for weeks now, but this is worse." I remembered what the creature had said in Emily's voice. "Dying." It hadn't been threatening me. It had been warning me. "You've been exposed too long," I realized. "All those water samples, all those field tests." She nodded, her body trembling. I knew the risks, but somebody had to document it. Outside, chaos reigned. The creature moved from boat to boat, destroying the dumping operation. The men fired at it, but bullets seemed to have little effect. Its fur released clouds of that toxic substance, making the men choke and fall. I noticed something else. The substance was highly flammable. When it touched the fire from our burning boat, it ignited instantly. The creature knew this. It was willing to burn everything, including itself, rather than let the dumping continue. "Emily, stay here," I said, making a decision. "I have to help it." "Be careful," she whispered. "It's the last one, Tony. The last guardian of this place." I waded back into the toxic water, my military training taking over. I moved silently, approaching the men from behind as they focused on the creature. One by one, I disarmed them, using my combat skills to protect rather than destroy for once. The creature saw what I was doing and changed its strategy, herding the men toward me. Together, we neutralized the threat. When it was over, the men were zip-tied with their own equipment, their dumping operation documented on Emily's camera. The evidence would be impossible to ignore. I returned to the chickie hut, victorious but afraid of what I'd find. Emily was still alive, but barely. "Did we get them?" she asked weakly. "We got them," I assured her, holding her hand. "Your evidence, my testimony, they're finished." She smiled faintly. "And our friend, the guardian?" I looked out at the water. The creature watched us from a distance, its eyes reflecting the moonlight. "It's still here, but it's hurt, Emily. I don't know if it can survive what they've done to this place." "Then you have to help it," she said, her voice growing fainter. "Promise me, Tony, promise you'll protect what's left." I held her tightly as her breathing slowed, then stopped altogether. The chemicals had done their work. Not quickly with bullets, but slowly, poisoning her over months as she fought to expose the truth. The creature approached the hut, watching as I held Emily's body. It made that mournful sound again, sharing my grief. "I know what I have to do now," I told it, gently laying Emily down. "For her, for this place, for you." In the days that followed, Emily's research and my testimony brought Everglades agricultural industries to justice. Massive fines were levied, operations suspended, cleanup efforts begun. It wasn't enough to heal the damage already done, but it was a start. I resigned from the Park Service and formed my own environmental watchdog group, using my military skills to monitor and expose companies that continued to pollute in secret. Some called me an eco-terrorist. I called myself a guardian. The creature and I formed an unlikely alliance. I never told anyone about it. Who would believe me? But together, we protected the last pristine areas of the Everglades. The creature, guiding me to new threats, me using human means to stop them. 6 months after Emily died, I was installing monitoring equipment near one of the agricultural canals when I noticed I was being followed. Not by the creature this time, but by men in dark clothing. Security contractors hired by the companies I'd been targeting. I knew too much. I'd caused too much trouble. The accident they arranged was clever, made to look like I'd fallen into an old drainage pipe and drowned. No one would question it too closely. Just another tragedy in the Everglades. But as I felt my life slipping away, trapped in that concrete tube, I wasn't afraid. I'd sent Emily's final research to every news outlet in the country. The evidence we'd gathered together would ensure that parts of this precious ecosystem would be protected forever. And somewhere in the deepest part of the swamp, the last guardian would continue its watch, waiting for the next human who would listen to its warning. Perhaps in time, the Everglades would heal. Perhaps the guardian would grow strong again. Perhaps my death, like Emily's, would mean something in the end. As the water closed over my head, I thought I heard that familiar moan, not of anger this time, but of farewell. And I was at peace. My name is Jasmine Thibodeau, but everyone calls me Jazz. I've been a park ranger here in Francis Marion National Forest for just over 3 years now, though I spent most of my life guiding folks through the Louisiana bayous before that. Some days. I still can't believe I traded one swamp for another, but I guess the water gets in your blood. Tonight, the cypress trees stand like ghostly figures in the moonlight as I guide my small boat deeper into the swamp. Something isn't right here. Hasn't been for a long time. The frog chorus sounds wrong, their calls warped and uneven. My grandmother would have said they're singing funeral songs. I cut the engine and listen. Growing up, Creole taught me that water has memory, that ancient spirits dwell in these places. My grandmother's stories about water guardians don't seem so far-fetched anymore, not with what I've been seeing. A great blue heron stands motionless in the water ahead, its reflection distorted by an oily rainbow sheen that shouldn't be here. I dip my hand in the water and rub my fingers together. Slick, chemical. I've seen this before, back home when the plant started dumping. The summer moon is bright enough to navigate by, but it also reveals things I wish I couldn't see. Patches of unnatural foam gathered around fallen logs, dead fish floating belly up, and that unmistakable metallic smell that doesn't belong in nature. My boat radio crackles suddenly, making me jump. Through the static, I catch fragments of conversation. Numbers, locations, times. It's the 3rd night this week I've picked up these encrypted-sounding talks. Nobody's supposed to be out here this late, especially not suits from Meridian Chemical, talking about disposal sites. I steer toward a narrow channel where I spotted strange tracks yesterday. An alligator slides into the water as I approach, but even in the brief glimpse, I can see something's wrong with its jaw, twisted and malformed in a way that makes my stomach turn. The air feels heavy tonight, and not just from the humidity. There's a thickness to it that burns my nose and throat slightly. Whatever they're dumping isn't just killing the swamp. It'll kill the people in the communities downstream, too. Cancer rates are already climbing in the county. These waterways create the perfect hiding place for companies like Meridian. A maze of channels and inlets where evidence disappears with the next heavy rain. They think nobody notices, nobody cares about another dying swamp. The most disturbing thing is the silence. A healthy swamp at night should be loud. Insects buzzing, frogs calling, nightbirds hunting, fish jumping. But large patches of this swamp have gone quiet. Dead zones spreading like cancer through the ecosystem. My grandmother always said when the waters go silent, the spirits are gathering their strength. Something is waking up in this poisoned swamp. Something old and angry. And I think I might be the only one who understands what's really happening. I wasn't always a park ranger. 5 years ago, I was married to Michael, who worked as a chemical safety officer for Bayou Processing back in Louisiana. I thought he was one of the good guys, making sure the plant followed the rules. Turns out he was helping them hide what they were really doing to our waters. The night I found those documents in his office showing decades of illegal dumping, maps of my childhood swimming holes marked as discharge zones, something broke inside me. I left the next morning with nothing but my truck and my grandmother's gris-gris bag. My people have lived with the water for generations. My mother, grandmother, and all the women before them knew how to read the swamp, how to protect it. They passed that knowledge to me through stories, through walks along the bayou edge, through medicines made from plants that grew in clean water. I keep my machete sharp and my rifle loaded these days, not just for the gators and snakes, but because I've learned that some threats to the swamp walk on 2 legs and carry clipboards. That's how I met Marcus Webb 3 weeks ago. Found him, taking water samples near one of the deadest parts of the swamp. At first I thought he was working for Meridian Chemical, another scientist paid to say, everything's fine. But Marcus is different. He's not studying natural ecosystems, he's tracking what's killing them. These readings can't be right, he kept saying, looking at his equipment. The mercury levels alone should have triggered federal intervention. I keep my grandmother's gris-gris bag with me always now. Inside are herbs and roots she claimed could pull poison from water. I used to think it was just superstition, but I've seen clear water bubble up where I've sprinkled her mixtures. Some things science can't explain yet. Marcus thinks I'm a great navigator because I always know which channels to avoid and which ones to take. Truth is, I'm following the poison. My boat has traveled every inch of this swamp over the past year, mapping where these companies are dumping their waste. My boss thinks I'm overly protective of this place. It's just a swamp, Jazz, he says. But it's not just land to me. It's alive. It's a living thing that's being murdered slowly, and nobody seems to care. Last week, Marcus showed me reports of dinosaur attacks on equipment left overnight in the eastern channels. Metal torn like paper, deep scratches in wood. He thinks it's vandals or maybe alligators gone aggressive from territory loss. I didn't tell him what I think, that the old spirits my grandmother talked about are waking up, the guardians that protect the water when humans won't. I didn't tell him because I'm not even sure I believe it myself, or maybe I'm afraid to believe it. What I do know is that tomorrow, Marcus and I are heading to the deepest part of the swamp where the reports of strange sightings started, where the water runs black some days and glows green on others. I've been avoiding that place, but we can't anymore. Something is happening out there, and we need to find out what before whatever's out there finds us first. Dawn came too soon. Marcus met me at the dock with his equipment, water testing kits, cameras, and a notebook already half filled with observations. His face looked tired, like he hadn't slept much. Ready to find your dinosaur? I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. I'm just documenting environmental damage, he said, but his eyes kept scanning the tree line. These stories about creatures are just distractions from the real crime. We set off as the morning mist still clung to the water. About an hour in, we reached the first boat we'd found damaged last week. The aluminum hull was warped and corroded in strange patterns, not like any gator bite I'd ever seen. This isn't animal damage, Marcus said, running his fingers along the edge. It's like acid ate through it. Or claws, I whispered. He ignored that comment and took samples of the residue on the metal. As we moved deeper into the swamp, I noticed how the wildlife changed. First, there were fewer birds, then no birds at all. Even the insects seemed to disappear. Animals know when a place isn't safe anymore. We found the second boat at noon, wedged against a fallen cypress. This one was worse. The motor completely destroyed, wires hanging loose like someone had reached in and ripped out its guts. The edges of the tears in the metal were melted, not cut. "Jazz, look at this," Marcus called from the shore where he'd wandered. He pointed to a tree where someone had carved a symbol, a wavy line crossed with 3 vertical marks. My heart skipped. It was the same symbol my grandmother used to draw in the sand before her water blessing rituals. "It's probably just kids," I said, not believing it myself. Marcus's radio suddenly screeched with static, making us both jump. Through the noise came fragments of voices, then nothing, the same encrypted-sounding talk I'd been picking up. "That's the 3rd time today," he said, frowning at his equipment. "Something's interfering with the signal." As we pushed deeper into the channels, I started hearing something else, a faint singing that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Marcus didn't react, so I kept quiet about it. His equipment started giving strange readings, chemical levels that went off the charts one minute, then dropped to 0 the next. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, tapping the display. "Unless someone's actively dumping right now." The water around us began to glow slightly as the day faded into evening. Not the natural blue-green of healthy algae, but a sickly yellow-green that reminded me of the waste barrels behind Michael's plant. "We should head back," I said, feeling uneasy as shadows lengthened. "It's not safe out here after dark." Marcus shook his head. "One more water sample from the deep channel. That's where the highest concentration should be." I turned the boat toward the channel, but halfway there, the motor sputtered and died. No matter how many times I pulled the cord, it wouldn't start again. "The fuel line looks clean," I said, checking everything I could think of. "It's like something killed it." Marcus leaned over the side, looking into the dark water. "There's something moving down there." That's when we heard it, a low hiss that rose into a sound like no animal I'd ever heard. Part growl, part scream, all wrong. "Jazz," Marcus whispered, his face pale in the fading light. "What the hell was that?" The water around the boat began to ripple, like something large was rising from below. The water broke open just 3 feet from our boat. I'll never forget what I saw. At first, it looked like a man, but wrong in every way possible. Its skin was a patchwork of scales and something that glistened like wet leather. Where a face should be, yellow eyes glowed above a wide mouth filled with teeth that no human should have. Its hands ended in long, curved claws that dripped with something that steamed when it hit the water. "Don't move," I whispered to Marcus, who stood frozen with his camera half raised. The creature, the lizardman as locals called it, tilted, its head like it was listening to something far away. Then its eyes locked on mine. I felt a pull deep inside, urging me to reach out, to touch the water. My hand moved without my permission, stretching toward the surface. Marcus grabbed my wrist. "Jazz, don't!" The creature's skin shifted colors before our eyes, from muddy green to a sickly blue that matched the chemical waste I'd seen dumped. Last month. That's when I understood this thing wasn't just living in the pollution, it was becoming it. It opened its mouth and spoke. Not in words exactly, but I heard Marcus's voice coming from it, repeating things he'd said earlier. "These readings can't be right. The mercury levels alone." Then it switched to a language I'd never heard, but somehow recognized. The same language my grandmother would slip into during her deepest prayers. Ancient words for water, earth, protection. "It's trying to tell us something," I said. Marcus raised his gun with shaking hands. "Stay back." When he fired, the bullet passed right through the creature like it was made of fog. But where the bullet touched it, the creature's body rippled and showed me something else, a vision of this same swamp, but clean and alive, teeming with birds and fish and life. "Wait," I said, reaching for Marcus. "I don't think it wants to hurt us." The creature sank back into the water, but now I could see more of them, shapes moving beneath the surface, some small, some enormous, all watching us, A sound filled the air, water flowing but mixed with mechanical grinding and chemical hissing. The sounds of nature and industry at war with each other. The channels around us began to shift and change. Where we had been in open water, cypress trees now crowded close. Paths that had been blocked were suddenly clear. The swamp itself was moving, changing, showing us both what it was now and what it had been before the poison came. "This isn't possible," Marcus whispered, his scientific mind struggling with what he was seeing. The main creature surfaced again, closer now. It reached out with one clawed hand and touched the side of our boat. Where its fingers met the metal, images flowed like a movie. Tanker trucks emptying barrels at night, men in meridian chemical, uniforms checking maps, fish dying by the thousands. "It's showing us the evidence," Marcus said, his voice hollow with shock. "Everything I've been trying to document." The creature's eyes found mine again, and this time I understood what it wanted. It needed someone who knew the old ways, someone with a connection to both worlds, science and spirit. It needed me to help heal what had been broken. "I know what you are," I said softly, reaching for my grandmother's gris-gris bag. "You're the guardian my grandmother told me about, the protector that wakes when the waters are dying." It bowed, its head, a gesture so human it made my chest ache. Marcus was frantically taking pictures, collecting samples from where the creature had touched our boat. "This changes everything, Jazz. With this evidence, we can shut down Meridian for good." The creature hissed a warning as the sound of another boat engine growled in the distance. It slipped beneath the surface, but not before fixing us with one. Last look, a look that promised this wasn't over. "We need to get out of here," I said, suddenly afraid. "Now!" But our motor was still dead, and the approaching lights told me that whatever was coming wasn't here to help us. The approaching boat cut its lights as it neared us. I pulled Marcus down low. "Hide your camera," I whispered. "And the samples." Two men in Meridian chemical uniforms pulled alongside us. One held a flashlight that he shined in our faces, while the other kept his hand near what looked like a gun on his hip. "Park Service," I said, showing my badge. "Our engine died. You fellows mind giving us a tow back?" The men exchanged looks. "Pretty far out for Park Service," said the one with the flashlight, "especially after dark." "We're doing water quality tests," Marcus said, and I wanted to kick him for saying too much. "That's so," the second man leaned forward. "Mind if we see what you've collected today?" Before either of us could answer, something hit their boat from below, hard enough to make both men stumble. The water around us began to churn. "What the hell?" The first man aimed his light at the water, but there was nothing to see. Then fire erupted along the surface of the water. Not normal fire, but blue-green flames that didn't seem to need fuel to burn. It formed a circle around both our boats. That's when I remembered my grandmother's stories about purification rituals. How the guardian spirits would use fire to cleanse poisoned waters. "We need to get out of here," I told Marcus. "Now!" The Meridian men were panicking, trying to start their engine. One of them pulled his gun and fired wildly into the water. "Stop!" I yelled. "You'll just make it angry!" Too late. The water exploded upward as the lizardman rose between the boats, bigger now, its body glowing with the same blue-green fire that surrounded us. It reached into the Meridian boat and grabbed one of the men by the front of his shirt. The man screamed as the creature held him close, not hurting him, but showing him something that made his eyes go wide with terror. All those years. The man gasped when the creature finally released him. All those chemicals. I didn't know. The creature turned toward Marcus, who had his camera out again, documenting everything. Before I could stop him, Marcus leaned too far over the edge of our boat. The creature reached for him, not in anger, but in what seemed like desperation, to communicate. "Marcus, be careful," I called, but he was already being pulled into the water. I grabbed for him, but missed. When he surfaced seconds later, his eyes had the same haunted look as the Meridian Man. "The samples," he gasped. "They're not enough. We need to go to Site C7. That's where they've been dumping the worst of it." The narrow channel we were in had become a battlefield. The water burned while remaining water. The trees bent in impossible ways. Reality itself seemed to be tearing at the seams. Our boat started taking on water, whether from damage or something else I couldn't tell. We were sinking fast. "Jazz," Marcus coughed, his voice suddenly weak. "I don't feel right." His skin had taken on a grey tinge, and when he coughed again, I saw blood. "Chemical exposure," he wheezed. "Been feeling it for days. Thought I was being careful." I held him as our boat settled deeper into the water. The Meridian men had somehow gotten their engines started and were speeding away, leaving us behind. "The ritual," Marcus said, pressing his notebook into my hands. "Your grandmother's ritual. It's the only way." I didn't understand what he meant until I saw the gree-gree bag floating in the water between us. The creature, the guardian, was nudging it toward me with one clawed finger. With shaking hands, I opened the bag. Inside were the herbs my grandmother had always used: sweetgrass, sage, cypress bark, and others I couldn't name. I knew what to do without being told. I began to sprinkle them on the burning water while speaking the words my grandmother had and taught me, words I hadn't used since I was a little girl, helping her clean the bayou near our home. The fire on the water grew brighter. The creature sank down until only its eyes were visible, watching me work. Marcus's breathing grew more labored. "Keep going," he whispered. "It's working." The herbs dissolved into the water, leaving trails of clean, clear blue behind them. The burning spread outward, consuming the pollution rather than the water itself. I finished the bag of herbs and turned to check on Marcus. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. "Marcus, hold on," I begged. "Help is coming." But I knew there was no help close enough. The chemicals he'd been exposed to while gathering evidence, not just tonight but for weeks, had done their damage. "The notebook," he said, his voice barely audible. "Everything's there. All the evidence, the dumping sites, the cover-ups." He squeezed my hand once, then went still. I screamed my grief to the night sky, holding his body as our boat continued to sink. The creature surfaced beside us, its eyes now a clear, healthy green instead of sickly yellow. It reached out one clawed hand and touched Marcus's forehead, in what seemed like a gesture of respect. Then it helped me drag our sinking boat to shore, where I covered Marcus with my jacket and sat beside him until dawn broke over a changed swamp. The water around us was clear, clearer than I had ever seen it. Fish moved beneath the surface. Birds called from the trees. Life had returned to this small corner of the swamp. The guardian was gone, but I knew it wasn't far. It had shown me what was possible, that healing could happen, that damage could be undone. It had also shown me my path forward. 3 months later, I stood on the steps of the county courthouse, facing a crowd of reporters. Behind me stood my new colleagues from the Environmental Defense Alliance. "Today," I said into the microphones, "we filed charges against Meridian, chemical for decades of illegal dumping that has poisoned our waters and our communities." I held up Marcus's notebook and the samples he died collecting. "This evidence will ensure not only that those responsible are held accountable, but that the healing of our swamps can begin." I didn't tell them about the guardian spirit that still visits me in dreams, showing me where the poison runs deepest. I didn't tell them how sometimes when I'm alone in the swamp at night, I see eyes watching me from the water. Eyes that know me as an ally in the fight to save what we almost lost. Some truths are too sacred to share, but the truth about what Meridian did, that truth belongs to everyone, and I'll fight to my last breath to make sure it's heard. They've tried to silence me. I've received threats, had my car vandalized, even Found a dead alligator on my doorstep one morning. But I won't stop. Marcus wouldn't have stopped. And somewhere in the deepest part of the swamp, an ancient guardian is watching, waiting to see if humans will finally learn to protect what gives us life. The waters are speaking. This time I'll make sure everyone hears them.